Good afternoon, friends, and welcome to another edition of the Irish Breakdown Podcast. I'm Vince D'Addario. That guy over there is Brian Driscoll, and we're back for another afternoon edition of Irish Breakdown. And we got a fun one for you guys today. We are going to talk confidence. Confidence in this team overall is what we're going to talk about first, and then we're going to kind of break it down as we go. We're going to talk offense, we're going to talk defense, we're going to talk team as a whole. And we're gonna kind of rank it like our confidence level. And here's the key. Here's the thing that I want to make sure everybody understands. This is confidence today, like June 13th. We know what we have coming out of spring practice, but not projecting what we think will happen after fall camp and into August 31st. So where are we now? Like these can change. These can change a month after, fall practice starts. Fall practice starts July 31st, August 31st. We may have a different opinion on some of the stuff that we're going to talk about today.
So
that I want to make sure.
Know.
Yes.
Yes.
I want to make sure people understand that. Yeah. Right. What we know right now, if there was going to be a game tomorrow, these would be our confidence picks for the various pieces that we're going to discuss today, Brian. But before we jump into that, how's your Thursday going?
It's going great, man. I'm still trying to kick this caffeine sugar addiction that I have. So I got a little bit of a headache today, but powering through. Got me some Irish tea, some Irish breakfast tea today, right here. Right, got it mixed with a little green tea, a little honey. So nice. I'm ready to go, man. Because I mean, look, honestly, Vince, I remember sitting here last summer at this time, and it was just there was so much. Like you and I would talk every day, and we like this football team, but there were so many like what ifs. Sure. And, I like this team, but honestly, with this team, part of the reason we wanted to do this is just continue to build into our preview of the team. And, Vince and I are finalizing, what the summer schedule is going to be. And I don't know if we have enough shows to be able to get everything in, with all the stuff we want to talk about. But the genesis of this topic was looking at this team and saying, man, I have a lot of confidence in this team. Like I do. I'm more certain that this team is going to reach its full potential than I was last year's team, as much as I like last year's team. And then kind of thinking through like, okay, well, why do I feel that way? What are the reasons? And then what could be some of the stumbling blocks? And so just kind of looking at it and saying, okay, we're going to break down a lot of projection moving forward, but where are we with this team now? And where does this confidence in the team as a whole come from? And so we kind of broke it down into like 6 team categories and couple offensive categories, couple defenses, and then like each position group and just looking. And you know what? I left one off, Vince. We'll have to do it during the defensive one. I can't believe that you didn't catch me.
I was going to say STs, right?
Yes. I can't believe you didn't catch me on that. I'm a little disappointed in you, to be honest with you. I'm so telling Dylan. But that's where it comes from, Vince. It's just that notion of like, look, this team's very talented. And even the national media is buying in to this team right now because,
scary.
And to a degree, like, are they setting them up to fail? But no, what people see is, they watched this team play Ohio State last year, and everybody with the brain saw that Notre Dame was the better team in so many ways. They just couldn't finish, right? They watched, at the very least, you could say they went toe to toe. I know a lot of people in the journalism profession and the coaching profession are like, I don't know how Notre Dame lost that game. It's just different than in the past where Notre Dame would play out of their minds and then barely lose because they just weren't good enough. This is a game where Notre Dame played like absolute garbage against Clemson and basically lost by a touchdown. It's like you just watched this team go out and toy with people last year at times. Like they toyed with NC State early and then dominated them and just completely obliterated USC from start to finish. This is a team that people look at and say, well, there's some athletes on this team. And Notre Dame is doing some things that we're not really used to. And so there's that confidence level. But, I've had lots of conversations at summer events where with friends, I'll compare this team's roster to past rosters. And you're like,
there's no comparison.
From
a depth standpoint.
There's a couple teams that you could look at and say, okay, that team is close. That team is close. Because, like the 15 team had more bona fide star power on both sides of the ball, where this team has some star power on defense. But, this team's like Xavier Watson, Benjamin Morrison on star power on defense. That 15 team had Jalen Smith, Sheldon Day. offensively, it's Ronnie Stanley, Quentin Nelson, Will Fuller. I mean, there was so much star power on that team. This team has more depth. So you just look at it and say, man, there's a lot of reasons to be confident. Yeah. So we're going to dive into every little particular of this team and the schedule and the opponents as we get into the offseason. But I thought it'd be fun to kick things off by just kind of going over what our confidence level is.
Yeah.
And so we'll go through 1 to 5, 1 being the lowest, 5 being the highest. 5 means like this team right here is championship caliber in this area now. 4 is, okay, this team right now in this area is playoff caliber. Number 3 is this team is, look, it's good, but, there's some question marks. 2 is it's a problem. 1 is, they're in trouble. And I can promise y'all there's no 1s. And I don't know that there's many 2s, to be completely honest with you, if any. So we'll dive into that. And that's kind of where we're coming from, Vince. And it's going to be fun, man. Like you said, we were like, man, we're going over like, if we got to make sure that we use some brevity here, because otherwise this could be a really long freaking show.
Yeah, that's what I was like, when you were telling me about it, I was like, is this, are we doing like a 6-7 hour show? Like, is that the plan here? Because if it is, I just need to make sure I properly prepare myself. but
this is going to kind of hit on the big picture.
Right.
And then as we dive into the rest of the offseason, we'll dive into more particulars. Yeah. And that's what's going to be fun. So I'm looking forward to this topic today, Vince.
Yeah, I'm very interested to see kind of where we are, because we didn't, obviously full disclosure, right? We didn't go over our picks with each other.
We rarely do.
We rarely do.
For reasons of having it to be a little bit more organic and kind of natural, our reactions to each other.
But I may have to get your breakdown of what the 1 through 5 means again, because I'm stuck on a couple of different ones. Like
5 is right now. 4? This is championship caliber.
Okay.
Right. 4 is this is playoff caliber.
Okay.
3 is it's good. It's like top 25-ish. But, there's some, is it good enough? Are there some question marks? 2 is it's a concern. And 1 is,
Right. I don't have any 1s. I mean, I don't think I'm going to shock a lot of people by saying I don't have any 1s, but this is going to be fun though. I'm very interested to see where you go with some of these, especially this first tier of what we're gonna talk about. So Brian, let's jump in here to the overall team. So we're gonna look kind of big picture, okay? We're gonna talk coaching, we're gonna talk about big game, things of that nature, okay? And where based on the last couple of years with Marcus Freeman being the head coach, based on additions, subtractions that he's made from his coaching staff, experience that they've had, all of those different things are going to play in here and what it looks like moving forward. So this is team as a whole, not offensively specific, not defensively specific, but team as a whole is what we're going to talk about in this first segment. Okay. And so we got to start at the top, right? The buck stops. So we're going to talk coaching. So coaching overall, where do you have this team right now in June?
I'm at a 4. And the reason I'm at a 4 is I don't know that it's championship caliber yet. And what I'm trying to do with this is to be objective and not project at all. Look at what we know about these coaches, what we know about this staff. And not, well, I think this guy is going to do a good job here. I think this guy is going to do this there. It's what do we know? Mm-hmm. And based on what we know, I don't believe that we can look at this. I don't know how you can argue that this is a championship caliber coaching staff, because I don't know that anybody on the coaching staff has won a championship. I don't believe. And then when you also look at it and say, well, it's not a question. It would have been a 3 based on some past staffs. Mm-hmm. But when you look at the addition, Marcus Freeman going into year 3, so that experience, the things he's learned about himself, looking at the moves he's made this offseason, which show me the head football coach knows this team needs work, that this team isn't there yet, that he's not there yet, about, going and visiting a bunch of NFL teams this summer, just going over with them. How do you prepare? How do you go about your business? Going out and spending time on a U.S. battleship to just kind of get down, and then you're talking about how they prepare, how they go about their business, how they structure their day. The leadership of that aspect of it, and saying, look, because you're doing this because he knows I've got to grow. Mm-hmm. I've got to get better. I'm not doing everything I need to do. That's why we lost to Ohio State. That's why we weren't prepared at the end of that game. That's why we weren't prepared for Clemson. That's why we weren't prepared for Louisville. Then you look at the moves he's made. Obviously, getting Mike Denbrock was a big move. You lose Chris O'Leary. That's a loss from a coaching standpoint. We can have our recruiting conversation, but the one thing we've never argued is
coach. Yeah.
Coach.
Yeah.
Coach. So now you've got Mike Mickens coaching that whole group. There's confidence there. Max Bulla now being a full-time guy, keeping him on staff. That's a positive. Now Al Golden's going into year 3 of his defensive system. So there's going to be a lot of knowledge there. You talk about, Drake Bowen's just a sophomore. Well, Drake Bowens goes into this season with as much experience as J.D. Bertrand had going into last year, right? Because of the fact that they were going into year 2. Well, now Drake's going into year 2. And then the addition of Mike Denbrock, and Mike Brown on offense, to me, raised the bar. And I was talking to a friend of mine. He and I have a very big difference of opinion on Jared Parker. And he thought he was terrible and was glad he's gone, being a bit hyperbolic. My thing was, I think Jared Parker had a lot of potential, but there were things he clearly had to get better at. So if he's still the OC, I'd be talking to you all about what I think he can do and projecting what I hope he can do and where I think he'll make adjustments and why I'm optimistic that he's going to be better, but it would be pure projection.
Exactly. And we're not doing that today.
With Mike Denbrock, it's, dude, just do what you did at LSU the last 2 years. Do what you did at your last 2 years at Cincinnati. Do what you did at Notre Dame. Just keep doing what you're doing. With Mike Brown, it's like, dude, do what you did at Cincinnati for 4 years. Do what you did at Wisconsin last year. So there's so much more confidence. And then you talk about, Dylan McCullough is one of the best in the business as what he does. Joe Rudolph's now going into year 2. There's no, there's only one new coach on staff as far as someone who doesn't understand what it's like to be at Notre Dame. Mike Denbrock's a new coach to this regime, but he understands the expectations and all the things that go with being at Notre Dame, which can be an adjustment for a coach. And I think that continuity and then improving the overall talent of the coaching staff is why I go 4. They've got to prove to me that they can take it to the next level, but there's no doubt in my mind that this is a playoff caliber football team. And that's where a lot of my confidence comes from for this team as a whole is faith. There's some, Al Washington, I got some concerns about Al Washington as a recruiter. I don't have concerns that Al Washington is going to be able to coach his defensive lineup this year. I don't. You know what I mean? We're talking football. We're not talking recruiting and all that. We're talking, can they coach this team up? I have a great deal of confidence that this is going to be a really, really good coaching staff, Vince.
I had him at a 4 as well. And I would say and I'll boil it down because you had some really good points in there, but I'll boil it down to one very, very, very singular situation for me. If this was the same coaching staff as last year, okay, this would be a 3 for me. Okay. Adding Denbrock, subtracting Chancey Stuckey, that brings it up to a 4 automatically. This staff right now, this is a playoff staff. There's no doubt in my mind this is a playoff staff. Now, I have questions as to whether they can win a championship because we haven't seen that yet, right? But as of right now, because of one subtraction and one addition, it automatically vaults this group from a 3 to a 4. And that is the same as, with Freeman being in year 3 and what I've seen from him from a growth standpoint from when he got the job until now. He has grown tremendously. And one thing we've always talked about with Marcus Freeman, and I'll get into this as we move down the line here on some of these other ones, is he does put his money where his mouth is, so to speak. He talks about challenging everything. He challenges everything when it comes to what he does as a head coach from a day-to-day standpoint, from a week-to-week standpoint, from a philosophy, from hiring coaches to, game day. I mean, you name it. He has changed or questioned everything that he has done from the time he got here until right now, right? And I anticipate that will continue, but that's not what this show is about. It's where is he right now? He has grown tremendously, in my opinion. Now, part of that growth is hiring coaches, firing coaches, getting the proper coaching staff in place. I thought he did a really good job of that in this particular offseason. And so going through spring, seeing kind of what these guys have, knowing what their background is, all of those things, where they stand right now. This is a playoff coaching staff.
Right.
There's no doubt in my mind. got to see where they can go. I would
Right.
love to say 5 right here. I love this coaching staff. I do.
Yeah.
But they don't have the championship experience
No.
yet. I mean, that
No.
would be a little pie in the
And
sky.
there's still too many questions about the head coach, right? I mean, there's questions about
for sure.
the O-line coach. Not that if they're good or not. I think we can establish they're all good. The question is, are they elite? There's no bad coach on the roster right now, which has not always been true. There's no I don't know if that guy can coach or not, but it's okay. But are they elite? That's the question. There's a lot of good things that Marcus Freeman has done. He made a lot of changes, but now he has to go show it in the fall that, he's going to be more aggressive, that he's going to be this, he's going to be that. And you could tell at times last year that he wasn't super confident in his football team. There's some people in the chat, questioning Marcus Freeman's in-game decision-making looking at the Duke game. And I'm like, no, you guys are missing the boat there, right? You're looking at this simply from a fan standpoint. If I'm a head coach, we just converted a play to get into field goal range. We got a big-legged kicker, and our offensive line has got their behinds kicked this entire game.
Right.
So I'm gonna drop back and throw on the next play, and Sam Hartman gets sacked, and now
you're out of field goal range.
We're out of field goal range.
Yeah, exactly.
Had you watched what that O-line had happened to them the entire game? And so they weren't playing for a 40-yard field goal. They were going to run the ball, get closer to the end zone, call timeout, and kick the game-winning field goal. Right? When you have to look at that and say, that's a guy that wasn't confident that his team could put that ball in the end zone. That if they drop, think about it. How many times did Sam Hartman get hit and have to scramble on that final drive?
Mm-hmm.
So they were in a 4th and 16 for a reason. You were getting dominated in the trenches. Fortunately, they lined up and they ran a play, and Aldrich did what he did, and line did what they did, and it worked out great. But you have a coach that now has to show that he can be more confident in his team and turn it loose. And we can say in theory he's going to do that, and if he does, that maybe gets them into a 5. But you can't go 5 right now.
Absolutely,
you can't go 5.
And do I have confidence that he's going to keep challenging himself and keep getting better? Sure, but that's a projection. And that's not what we're talking about right now. We're talking about in the now, right now. Now, look, I could make a pretty good bet that he's sitting in his office right now. Actually, he's probably out at camp. But either way, he's sitting there challenging and going over games that he's coached in, the decisions that he's made. I guarantee you he's going over all of that and learning from it and deciding, okay, was that the right decision in the moment? Was it not the right decision in the moment? All of those things. What he's doing right now in the summertime will affect in a positive manner moving forward. But as of right now, we can't. That's a projection. We can't do that. We got to talk about where we're at right now.
Here's another one, Vince. Let's go to topic number 2. When you talk about what makes it, these things are kind of like, these are aspects, big picture aspects that constitute the things of what make a team a championship team, and that's ultimately what the goal is, right? And that's where the excitement comes from, is people actually believing that this team can be a championship caliber team. I mean, heck, my guy Garen Knutson with the super chat at the kick the show off with the big one. Why? Because he's fired up, because we're talking about the confidence of this team. There's a lot more confidence in this football team. But one thing that all of us that are fans of Notre Dame or analysts that cover the team know is big game play is going to be a big part of who this team is. Thriving in your biggest moments is where you are, is what determines whether you're a good football team that maybe makes the playoff at 11-1 or maybe even 10-2 as a 10-11 seed. Or are you a team that when you get to the playoff, people are like, oh, crap. We got Notre Dame's potentially, whether you play them in the first round or you look at your saying, oh, shoot, we got to play Notre Dame in round 2. We don't want any part of that. Shoot, I hope that so-and-so can take care of Notre Dame in the quarters, because otherwise we may have to get them in the semis, and nobody wants any part of that. Are they that team, or are they the team that still just can't win the big one? Because if we're looking at history, this one's hard. If we're looking at history, it's not good. Looking at the future, it's unknown. So when you look at this football team, Vince, and you think about, can this team thrive in the big games? What are the big games? At Texas A&M, Louisville at home, Florida State at home, at USC, and then once they get to the postseason. So what's your confidence level, Vince, that this team is actually going to be able to thrive in those big game moments?
This is a very difficult one for me, to be perfectly honest with you, because I felt like after year 1, I thought Marcus Freeman did a really good job of getting them up for the big games, but it was the not so big games that we had a lot of question marks about him getting them ready for, right? And some of that is the coach. Some of that is player leadership. All of those different things all kind of combine in to whether or not you're ready for a big game. Okay. When you look at last year, I thought, as you mentioned in the open, Notre Dame played really well against Ohio State, but they couldn't close it up, right? They couldn't finish
at times.
that game.
They played well at times.
Yeah, fair
I
enough.
would argue they outplayed Ohio State for 56 minutes of that game.
Sure.
But to your point, last four,
you got to finish. I mean, that's by far the most important part of the game is you got to finish that game. And then you look at Clemson on the road. They didn't play very well, Clemson on the road. Louisville on the road. Didn't play very well, Louisville on the road. So
Duke on the road was a big game. Top 25 game. They played like crap. They just had better players than Duke did. That's the only reason they won that game.
Absolutely. So for me, when you project forward to this year and the big games that are on the schedule, I have a lot of confidence that Notre Dame should win those games, but I have to go off of what they've done in the past. Okay. So I was torn between a 3 and a 4 here, and I'm going to go with 3. I'm going to stick with a 3 for now. I still, again, from a projection standpoint, I still think Notre Dame's going to win 11 games or something, along those lines, 11, 12 games. I think they have the ability to do that. I think they will do that. But as of right now, when I'm looking at the past up until now, they got to prove it. And, if we were be able to do halves, maybe I would go 3.5. But I'm going to stick with a 3 right now and hedge my bets and just say, I feel like there's a lot of room for improvement when it comes to the big games. And that's why I have to stick with a 3 right now.
This is why I didn't allow us to do halves, because there are some where it's like, dude, I'm not quite sure where to go with this one. I'm in a solid 3, Vince. Here's what I know about this team right now, today, June 13th, what I can say verifiably about this team. In the 4 big games they're going to play in the regular season, I'm very confident they're going to play well in at least 2 of them. Right? Just like last year.
Yeah.
You look at the big games last year. I would argue NC State, Ohio State, Duke, Louisville, USC, Clemson. I'd say they're 2 for 4 when it comes to playing well. Now, they won 3 of those games,
right?
But they didn't play well against Duke. They just had better players than Duke. Right? That's the only reason. Let's be honest. The only reason Notre Dame beat Duke last year is because our dudes are better than your dudes, kind of thing. Looking at it from Notre Dame standpoint.
Sure.
So I can't tell you that right now I'm incredibly confident that they're going to go out there and play well in the other 2. Now, I think they're going to go at least 3-1 in those games because I have Notre Dame 11-1 this year. But I can't tell you that I have my confidence is not greater now that they're going to play better in those big games than it was a year ago. Yes, the coaching staff is better. Yes, I love the roster. But Notre Dame in the last 2 years in both seasons has lost to inferior opponents. Mm-hmm. Louisville was an inferior opponent. Clemson was an inferior opponent. Marshall, Stanford, the year before, inferior opponents. USC was not at that time because Notre Dame was really banged up and USC was a very good football team that year. Ohio State was not. Ohio State was not inferior to Notre Dame in 22. And they weren't inferior to Notre Dame last year. They were on the similar level. Notre Dame outplayed them in certain ways. Ohio State was more money in that game, which is why they got the W and Notre Dame got the L. So this actually was not a hard one for me at all because the only way I could get to 4 is if I'm projecting.
Right.
That's
so hard not to, by the way, just because of what we're talking about and the way we've put this show together. But yeah, I agree with you.
The big game, it's show me. Big game is show me mode, Vince. It's simple as that. It's They have to show me that they can play well in those big moments.
Yep. Speaking of showing up in big moments, our next category, I think it feeds off of it feeds off the last category for sure. I think it feeds off the coaching category. We're talking road games. Okay. How does Notre Dame do on the road? What is your confidence level of how Notre Dame does when they are away from Notre Dame Stadium? And you could throw in neutral site games. You could do all of those different things, right? But when they're away from Notre Dame Stadium, what is your confidence level in Notre Dame on the road?
I'm actually a 4 here.
Okay.
Because I don't think Notre Dame's issues are road versus home. I think their issues are more big game related.
Okay.
I actually think if you look at last couple seasons, some of their best games have been road games. I mean, they just went on the road and absolutely obliterated a 9-win North Carolina team 2 years ago. They went away from home and whooped BYU. They went on the road and smashed a top 25 team in Syracuse. They went on the road against USC, and even though they were shorthanded, they played well in that game. They just were outmanned in a lot of ways. Look at last year, went on the road and beat a 9-win good North Carolina State team.
Mm-hmm.
So they've had their moments where I think they've played well on the road. I don't think the Louisville game was about so much about being on the road as it was about just the overall inconsistency of this football team and then not showing up in the biggest moments, not being able to answer the bell week after week after week after week. That's the issue. You say, well, they make too many mistakes on the road. Well, I mean, I look at the start of the Pitt game and say, well, the only reason that didn't hurt them more is because Pitt sucked. Ohio State game was at home. They didn't necessarily do what they needed to do in the Ohio State game. Like, how's the Ohio State game different than the Duke game? Okay, Ohio State's better, but the mistakes were still there. It's more about this team not being consistent enough in those areas. I don't think the road is as big of an issue as we think. I mean, I think that team, for example, against Ohio State in 2022, Notre Dame was ready to play at Ohio State. They were ready to play. Ohio State was just a much better team than they were.
Yeah.
Simple as that. I mean, they were not good enough in the trenches, and the game plan wasn't all that good, to be honest with you, in my opinion. There's a lot of wasted opportunities in that game. Ohio State was just better. The best player on the field that day wore a Buckeye uniform, and his name was C.J. Stroud. I mean, it's as simple as that. I mean, they made him make some big-time money throws, and he did. And, Notre Dame had a lead late in the third quarter of that game. So I don't think it's so much on the road. I think it's the lack of consistency and showing up consistently in the big moments, home or away, is more of where I'm at. And so I look at this year and I don't view, my concerns aren't about being on the road. My concerns are, will you show up in the bigger moments? Like, they're not going to go on the road and struggle against Purdue. They're not going to go on the road and struggle against, Georgia. I'm sorry, I think of what their road games have some weird road trips. Navy, Army.
Georgia Tech is technically, I mean, it's a road
sort
game.
of,
They keep saying that it's a neutral game. It's in the same city
right,
that Georgia Tech is in. Like, that's
because they only play 2 road games on an opposing team's campus. That's A&M at Purdue, and they only have 3 true road games because then you throw USC in there. That's a true road game, even though it's not on their campus.
Right.
It's more so about the big game aspect to me, Vince. So I actually think the road part, because when I think of a team that struggles on the road, I think of a team that just consistently struggles on the road. And it's just, when you're on the road, they're a different team. I think Notre Dame's a different team from week to week, no matter where they play.
That's fair.
I don't think it's a road problem.
Yeah.
I think it's just an overall issue for me.
For me, when I tried to sit down and I tried to think about this, the past 2 years, how have they done on the road, whatever. And you make good points. Last year, I always felt less confident, and says these are confidence picks. I felt less confident when they went on the road. Now, what the reasoning behind all of that is, I think you make great points on that. But to me, their 2 most devastating losses were Louisville and Clemson, and they were both on the road. And maybe that's just a coincidence that those both happened to be on the road, or where they ended up on the schedule, or that kind of thing. And here's the other piece of it. If you're projecting forward to this season, I think the road schedule's not that hard. Like, I think they're going to do well.
Start and the end are challenging, but
sure,
the middle is not.
But I think on the road, I have a lot of confidence moving forward.
Right.
But if I'm looking at the past, and specifically last year, and I don't even count Ohio State in 22. Like, I thought they came to play in that game. That's why I was as pissed off as I was when we were walking out of the stadium. You know what I mean? Because it's one thing if you get your doors blown off and you just kind of like, okay, well, we just weren't very good. You know what I mean? It's like, Notre Dame was right there. You know what I mean? It was like, somebody fight me. Let's go. But Louisville and Clemson last year, to me, in my own brain, were devastating. So I have it as a 3, but I can very easily, as things move forward, like that's the most mobile number I think I've had so far.
Yeah.
That I'm anticipating being able to jump up.
Right.
I just can't shake last year at this point.
Like, somebody in the chat was like, well, Notre Dame didn't play well against better teams on the road. And my response is, well, Notre Dame didn't play well against the better teams on defense anywhere because Ohio State was at home and the offense also played poorly.
Correct.
And they had scored more points against Clemson on the road than they did Ohio State at home. They scored more points on the road against Louisville than they did against Ohio State at home. They scored more points against Duke on the road than they did Ohio State at home. Right, that's where I'm coming from on it, Vince, is that aspect. I think it's a big game issue more than it's a road issue.
That's fair.
Now you could argue road games against the better teams. Again, agree, but that's a big game. Better team issue than it is a road issue.
Yeah, I get it.
Because like I said, one of the most impressive wins of Marcus Freeman's tenure was a true road game where they absolutely curb stomped North Carolina. And so like, okay, well, they played well there. They dominated Syracuse on the road from start to finish. I mean, they jumped first play of the game, boom, pick, take it back. Yeah. It's like, wow, okay, right. They came to play. There's been enough games where they have played well on the road where I'm like, I don't think they have a road problem. I think they have a big game problem and a big game offensive problem.
Sure.
And that's really what it comes down to. So one thing that we look at the past, Vince, that I think is important for a football team is you have to handle your business against the inferior opponents. When you look at Notre Dame's big games, if they're going to, they're like people say, oh, Notre Dame's schedule's weak. Well, Sporting News came out with their top 25 this past week for post-spring, and 4 of Notre Dame's opponents, that's a third of their opponents, were ranked in the top 25. This notion that Notre Dame has a weak schedule is, I just think, incredibly misguided. Is it a gauntlet? No, but it's a challenging schedule. So if you're going to have to be perfect against that that tough part if you are not able to go out there and handle your business week after week after week against the inferior opponents. So we have 2 bits of data for Marcus Freeman. 2022, Notre Dame lost 2 games to inferior opponents.
Like
just
super
flat out
inferior.
No bit. One was less than them, but still a good team. The other was awful.
Yes.
And they lost.
Right.
This past season, every team that was inferior to them by any like Duke was inferior to Notre Dame, but they were still a good football team. Every team that wasn't like that last year, Notre Dame not only beat, but they destroyed.
Correct.
So to me, that's something you have to do, but we have conflicting data, 23 versus 22.
Sure.
So as you look forward into 2024, Vince, where we are right now, what's your confidence level that Notre Dame is going to be the 23 version of that against inferior opponents as opposed to the 22 team that doesn't show up focused and gets beat by a team that they have no business, not only not even losing to, but it shouldn't even, like the Stanford game shouldn't even been close.
Agreed.
Much less losing. So what's your confidence level there, Vince?
So if we did this show a year ago, this might be my 2. Like I might have had a 2 here, to be perfectly honest with you. It's a concern. Right? If we did this show before the 23 season and we're coming off of the 22 season with the Stanford loss and the Marshall loss, man, like this might have been a 2, to be perfectly honest with you. After last year and the way they took care of business against teams that they were supposed to take care of business against, okay, this jumps up to a 4 for me. So this is a 4 right now based on 23. Now, we've got, like you said, we have 2 years to talk about. Is Marcus Freeman and this coaching staff and this team and this program going to be able to build off of 23, and that is going to be the norm, or is 23 the outlier? No one can say whether they know that or not, but I will say, based on what we know about Marcus Freeman and again how he challenges everything, I feel like there was some big time growth from 22 to 23, and that now has become the norm. And look, we give a lot of credit, rightfully so, to Brian Kelly post 2016, because post 2016 he started winning the games he's supposed to win and racked up a lot of W's, beating the teams he was supposed to beat. And you cannot take that away from him, and that is not the easiest thing in the world to do. Okay. Marcus Freeman, hopefully now after 23, that is going to be the norm moving forward. We don't have to worry about the teams that are equal or lesser than. You don't have to worry about that. And the key word here is dominating weaker opponents. Not just winning, but dominating weaker opponents. I feel good about that after last year. And all of the people that were Jared Parker detractors, right? I get your point of view. I see where you're coming from. But even with Jared Parker, they still dominated weaker teams. I mean, put up buku points, were dominant on defense. They were dominant on offense. I mean, they dominated weaker opponents. And if you are a detractor and now you've got Mike Denbrock, why would you not think that that is going to continue moving forward? And so it jumped from a 2 to a 4 for me. It's a 4. I think they will dominate their weaker opponents moving forward. I have a lot of confidence in that category.
I'm at a 5.
Oh, even
yeah. And there's, you mentioned Mike Denbrock, and that's obviously one. Al Golden's one. I mean, Al Golden's defense has played pretty well. I mean, they didn't lose to Stanford in 2022 because of the defense. They didn't lose to Marshall in 22 to the defense. I mean, defense had a chance to put it away late, and they didn't. And I get all that, but that game they gave up 19 points on defense. Like, sorry, you shouldn't lose a game when you give up 19 points on defense. This comes down to, I mean, that's important, but it comes down to this roster so much more talented than it's been in the past. Like Vince, they didn't play that well against Pitt and won by 51. They didn't play that well against Stanford and won by 33. They didn't play great against Wake Forest and won by 38. You know, they didn't play they actually, I thought, kind of played poorly in a lot of ways against Central Michigan and won by 24 points. You know, the only game where they just came out and like talent plus playing great and just dominating was like, you know, Navy was one, and then USC. Those are the only games I looked at and were like, they had everything clicking. Right? I mean, every other, like Tennessee State, they didn't play great. They just were way better than Tennessee State.
Right.
You know, and I thought NC State's another one. I thought they played really well coming out of the break against NC State. The weather delay. They weren't playing great going in, but NC State also had a pretty salty defense that, you know, that was throwing a lot of stuff at Notre Dame. So I just think it was last year wasn't about they were up for the big games. I just think their roster's at a point now, Vince, where they overwhelm people. And that's a great place to be. Like, major question marks about big game and on the road and all that. But the combination of coaching plus roster, I mean, we should have asked the question, you know, what's your confidence this roster is good enough to compete for a championship? I'd have been like easy 4.
That's a
easy 4.
5. Like I could talk
think
myself
about
into a 5 on that one. Yeah.
So those two things together give me an easy 5 that they're going to go out there and just dominate all their weak opponents. Right. And that's, I'm not talking like Georgia Tech. I actually like Georgia Tech. That's a team they could stumble their toe against, you know, a bit of a trap game situation. I'm talking about like Northern Illinois, Miami of Ohio, Purdue, Virginia, Stanford, Navy, Army. Those are the games I look at and say, those 7 games, they're not only going to be wins, but I think they're going to be dominant wins. Now the question is, what can you do in the Big 4 and against Georgia Tech? Because like Georgia Tech is this year's version of Duke. They're polar opposites, where Duke was kind of built on defense and ball control and all that. Georgia Tech's an explosive offense, and that is always my one recipe for what's my 2 of my key ingredients to a team that's going to pull off an upset. You have to have a dynamic quarterback. You got to be able to score. Well, that's Georgia Tech. You know, so there's talent there. Notre Dame should win and win convincingly, but I can understand that if they win that game and it's not a blowout, right? Should win the game. But the other 7, I don't think they're going to be close. So I'm at a 5. I think they're going to do what teams like Bama do. Even when they don't necessarily play great, they still dominate. And that was my point. It wasn't that they were super hyped for the Pitt game. They just had way, way better players than Pitt.
Right.
You know, they weren't super hyped for the Wake Forest game. They just had way better players than they did. And that's why I'm a 5 on that one. Because it doesn't come down to focus only, Vince. It's primarily like you don't even have to be super locked in on that game because you are just so much better than that team. You're just going to overwhelm them and dominate them. I mean, if you think about the Wake Forest game, they were starting, 3 new offensive linemen in that game, right? Or 2 new offensive linemen in that game, and won 45-7 because of all the injuries and stuff. So I'm an easy 5. Wow. Easy 5.
First 5 of the day, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Love it. Love it. So our next one is an interesting one for me because it's kind of it's responding to adversity. Okay. And responding to adversity is kind of an abstract to a degree. Like, what do you consider adversity? Is it off the field? Is it the week before, game? Is it, what are we talking about? Like, what is adversity? And I think to each his own, right? I think a lot of people consider something different to be an adversary than somebody else. And so responding to adversity is going to be an interesting one. I'm very interested to see where you go with this one. Do you want to give yours? So I'm setting you up. So yeah, go ahead with your responding to
I thought you still had more of a lead in. You just kind of seemed to like.
I was like, because I don't want to give up too much of what I want to say.
I'm at a 4, Vince, because I do think this team will handle adversity enough to win and get to the playoff. I don't know that this team is going to handle it well enough to get the seed that they need to get and then go make a run in the playoff. That's what I'm unsure of. Like even last year, I don't know that they lost to Ohio State because they didn't handle adversity well. I don't believe they lost to Clemson because they didn't handle adversity well. I think they lost to Clemson partly because Clemson handled adversity incredibly well with 8 starters out and super hyped up for that game. There are other things that I think factored in. We've seen them lose players and other guys step in and perform. And so I think that's one thing this team has. They're at least pretty good at. You could maybe argue. I think they're closer to a 3 than a 5.
Yes,
when it comes to this category, but I'm still going 4 because I like the Duke game. They responded to adversity pretty well in that game. They didn't against Louisville, so clearly they're not championship level. They responded to adversity pretty well against USC after losing Ohio State, barely beating Duke, losing to Louisville. You got a top 10 undefeated team coming to your field who beat you by 11 last year. Man, they responded to that incredibly well and just destroyed USC. So I think this team responds to adversity well. There's just another level they need to get to. There's no doubt about that. So I'm going 4 on that one.
What you said about them being closer to 3 than they are to 5, but going with a 4, that I can't. That's the perfect explanation for where I'm at, because I was tempted to go 3 or 4. I'm going to stick with 4, and the reason that I was kind of on the fence is because I don't think that they responded to adversity very well after the Duke game. The Duke game was a tough game. Like that was a slogged out, battle, right? And
they physically got their butts kicked in that game.
Yeah,
so if we're being honest about it, they just had better athletes. That's why they won the
game. That's exactly what happened. And when you have a game like that, how do you play the next game? You know what I mean? Like, how do you, respond after a physical pounding like that? I don't think they responded very well, right? And so that's not championship level response to adversity. And so that's why it's definitely not a 5. And I was in the range of 3 to 4. I'm going to stick with a 4 because then after the Louisville game, their very next game was their biggest rival in Southern California and beat the snot out of them, right? And so that is responding to adversity. They had a loss. They had a bad loss, in my opinion, to Louisville, and they responded with a butt whooping of your biggest rival. That's responding to adversity. So you can't have one without the other. You have to, if you're going to point out the negative, you also have to point out the positive. And so that's why they're at a 4 for me. They're not championship level yet, but they're right there and need to see a little bit more, because my biggest thing is going to be, let's say they make the playoff, Brian, and let's say in the first round they're hosting. Okay, that's great. How do you respond after you win that game? Now you're looking at, okay, all the guys are on, you're in the final 8. Like this, that's adversity, man. And this team hasn't been tested like that yet. And so what is that going to look like if they're in that position? So that's why it can't be a 5 yet, and it's a 4 for me.
Agree with you. So Vince, let's conclude this last section by looking at an aspect I think is very important. That's leadership from a player level. And you obviously need leadership at the coaching level. That's a given. We talked about that. But a lot of these things, as you said, they all kind of intertwine to a degree. There's no like this is this and it doesn't affect this. They all kind of go together. And they're the individual parts that make up a team that has the character and the culture to be a champion. Because a lot of people talk about culture of your football team, and that's important, but I think the character of your football team matters even more. The character of your football team is what matters in the fourth quarter, not your culture. Your culture has more to do with what you have going into it. It's the process it's the work you put in going into a game. It's your focus, off the field. Your character is more of, right? Like we like to use military examples, right? The culture of a military unit is the training. It's all those things. But then you get into battle, and it's your character that tells you whether or not you're going to you lose all that training and it goes out the window when the bullets are truly flying, or you're going to stand there and answer that bell in ways that people like you and I couldn't do.
Yeah.
Right. And so that to me is character. That's player driven. That is like 95% player driven. So to be a great team, in my opinion, especially Notre Dame, you have to thrive from a leadership standpoint. Where do you see this football team, Vince, right now, July 13th, from a player leadership standpoint?
This is where I'm extremely happy and excited to be a Notre Dame fan. Let me just say that, okay? Because more often than not, you're going to have good kids. You're going to have leaders. You're going to have positive locker room people. You know what I mean? Like those are the kind of kids that Notre Dame attracts. Now, I'm not saying every kid on the roster is like that, because we could tell you a million stories about negative locker room influences and all of those different
on the
things.
88 team.
Right.
There were guys like that.
Yeah.
I know that for a fact. I've talked to people that were part of those teams.
Right.
The 93 team, 88. You always have that, but they have to be like you said, they're the outcast.
They're the exception.
Nobody's going to let that guy.
Yeah. Right. They're the exception. They're not the norm.
And the cancer doesn't spread because of the culture of your team. If you don't have good leadership, those one or two cancers can spread throughout your locker room. There you go. It's great point.
Yeah. And so, again, that's why I love being a Notre Dame fan, because I don't necessarily worry about leadership. I don't. When you think about this team in particular, I think the defense is absolutely loaded with leaders. Guys that we know are good leaders, guys that have done it before. It's just absolutely loaded. And I feel really good about the defensive side of the ball. Unfortunately, the offensive side of the ball, I'm sure there's a lot of great guys over there. In fact, I know some of those guys over there are fantastic. Are they leaders on this team? I'm not sure yet. We had a buy-sell hold yesterday on whether Riley Leonard is going to be a captain or not. I think process of elimination, we were like, yeah, we'll buy it. I mean, because if you look at the offense and you look at the guys who have experience and you look at the guys who have been out there in the trenches or, in the mix in the past, that's a very short list. Or it's a list of guys that have been injured and they haven't really been out there if they've been around for a while. And there's been so much turnover in the wide receiver room, and there's been injuries at tight end. I mean, you can go down the list. And so I worry about the leadership on the offensive side, but here's the thing. I think it's going to work itself out. It's Notre Dame. I think there's going to be leadership here. I respect the culture and the leadership of this program. It's one of the reasons I love being a fan. So for me, this is a 5. It's a 5, even though I don't know who the leaders are going to be yet on the offensive side. It's still a 5 because I think that will take care of itself. And so I'm putting this as a 5 right now.
I'm at a 4 just because I don't know that, because of the offensive question marks from a leadership standpoint. We're talking about a guy that was a captain of his previous team, I believe, but this is a different locker room that he's got to win over. And I believe that Jaden Thomas is a leader. And here's what I say about Riley Leonard. When I talk about him when I say what I said, I need to drill down on that, because it's not so much that he's not going to try and lead.
Sure.
You can lead, but people have to follow. That's my question, is will they follow him?
Yeah.
I'm optimistic they will, because they followed Sam Hartman to a degree. But him just not being out there, we haven't seen it. That's the thing. We haven't seen him get that opportunity at Notre Dame right now. So if you want me to project what I think it's going to be, I'd probably lean towards 5. I think between Jaden Thomas and Chris Mitchell and Riley Leonard and some of the young guys that show some Jaden Greathouse shows some leadership traits. You've got some other guys that have some leadership traits. I think it's going to be okay. I think it's going to be a 5. But right now I can't go 5 because I do have those questions on offense. Defense 5, offense 4. But it's I always round down in these situations.
Sure.
And so that's kind of a where I'm at, Vince. Is I have enough questions about the leadership on offense, like the offensive line. Who's the leader going to be there? That matters. Is Ashton Craig going to be that guy? I think he will, but we don't know. You say, well, Tosh Baker's a 5th-year senior, but what if he gets beat out?
Right.
And then your starting offensive line, left to right, is redshirt freshman, senior, redshirt soft, or freshman if he gets right. So there's enough of that to make me concerned and say it's good. It's going to be good enough to be a playoff team. Is it good enough to go then make a run? I need to see more. But again, why do we have the confidence in this football team that we have? Because I'd be shocked if they're not a playoff team. What we don't know yet, though, is can they then do major damage and make that big 4-game run? That we don't know yet. And that's where I'm at with this one.
So that's our team look at the confidence picks. Okay. We're gonna drill down a little bit more as we move forward. But before we do, make sure you hit the like button, the subscribe button, hit that notification bell, share with your family and friends, and make sure you stay locked on to irishbreakdown.com. Get on the boards.irishbreakdown.com, especially if you want to be part of the buy, sell, hold show. If you want to get some good conversation going, it's the off season, man. This is when the conversation goes. This is where the speculation happens. This is where the recruiting is deep. So you got to be on the boards if you want to get all the insight and the intel, because there's a renewed excitement around this team, man, and it's all over there on the board. So make sure you guys check it out. All right, so let's turn our attention to a little bit more on the field, Brian, and we're gonna break this down both sides of the ball like we always do. And since you and I are the OGs and you and I are the offensive guys, we're gonna start with offense first because that's what we do. In the meantime, while you're listening, make sure you hit that like button, the subscribe button, the notification bell, share, jump on the boards, all that fun stuff.
Yeah.
But we're going to break this down.
By the way, Ryan just dropped, speaking of offense, dropped some major intel on the board about one of the official visitors from this week, John Anthony Hall, and a surprise visitor that was on campus during his visit. So you're going to want to check that out.
I'm telling you, it's all there, folks. You just gotta be a part of it. Got to be part of the IB family. So when we're talking offense, we're going to go a little bit big picture. We're going to break down the scheme a little bit, and then we're going to go into position groups, and we're going to talk about our confidence level there. Now, remember, as a reminder, folks, number one, it's our confidence level today, not projecting into the future. This is our confidence level today, coming out of spring ball, knowing what we know now as if there was a game tomorrow. What is our confidence level? Because it would change if we're projecting. It will change a month and a half from now when camp starts. It'll change 2.5 months from now when the season starts. But these are our confidence level picks right now in June. And so, Brian, let's kick this thing off with the run game. Confidence level of the run game.
Just so you all know, we're going to go run game, pass game, then kind of position by position. And that's going to take a little bit of a different angle. But just it's will the run game play at a championship level, right? Like good enough to really be a major force. It's not statistical. It's just, will they play at a level that allows this offense to play at a championship level? Run game, I'm going 4. I actually have a lot of confidence that the run game is going to be good this year. And part of the reason is for all the issues we had with the offensive line last year, there were times when they played at a very high level, even against good teams. I mean, one of the best games they had all year was against Ohio State, who I think had the best defensive line they played all year. Duke was close. That was a very good D-line at Duke. But I think Ohio State's was the best D-line they played all year. And they played great. I mean, and our big frustration was, why didn't you lean on that more in the fourth quarter? Right? They were pushing Ohio State off the ball.
Yes.
You should have rode into it. When, right before the drive stalled, I mean, Audric had like a 12-yard run where they just took Ohio State's undersized line and just pushed them back 5 yards. I mean, it was just ridiculous. So I think the talent is there. I believe that this year they're going to be less experienced, but very talented on the offensive line. They've got explosive running backs, and they've got a quarterback that I know can be an impact runner. Like, that's the final piece for me. Like, anything you lose from experience on the O-line, I think you make up for because of what you have at quarterback and just the overall talent you have at running back. So I'm confident this offensive line is going to be good enough for them to be a playoff team. Right now, like, I have a lot more confidence in the O-line. They're going to have their moments where they don't play well. That's a given because they're young. And that's a position where youth is so important, or experience is so important. But their talent is such, Vince, that they're just going to 8 games this year. They're just going to kind of handle business, even if they don't play great. Like this Wake Forest game, the O-line didn't actually play great that game. They were just so much better than Wake Forest that they just kind of pushed them around.
Yeah.
And so I think that this offensive line is going to be good. And I think the running backs are talented, and having a quarterback like Riley Leonard in the backfield, you cannot dismiss the importance of that to your run game. Go ask Notre Dame last year when they had bottled up Duke the entire game, how impactful a quarterback that can run is. Go ask Clemson, who's trying to, make a stop so they can go down and tie the football game up against Duke, how impactful it can be when you have a quarterback that can shake off 3 tacklers in the backfield on a designed run and then run 40-plus yards for a touchdown, outrun your entire secondary, including Nate Wiggins, who ran a 4.3 and was a first-round draft pick this year. So when you look at that, you have to factor that in. And honestly, I might lean towards I would have put more thought into 3. I probably would have still gone 4, but I would have put more. It would have been harder, and I would have gone 3 if Sam Hartman was still the quarterback.
Oh, sure.
Or Steve Angeli was the quarterback, or if CJ Carr or Kenny Minchey were the quarterback, just because of the youth of the offensive line. But I think while they're getting their feet wet, and a lot of people alluded to that in the buy so hold, having a guy like Riley Leonard, that's that extra weapon that has to force that extra guy into the box, is something that's going to take a lot of pressure off of it. And so that's why I'm at a suffer. I'm not like borderline 5. That's where we need to see the
championship level
right?
Run game is like
it's not.
That's a high bar.
That's down the road.
Yes, that's a high bar.
And I don't know that they're going to be that way on the run game this year. I don't know that they can get there this year. Now, that doesn't mean they can't win a championship if enough other areas are that good.
Sure.
Because Georgia's running game 2 years ago wasn't very good. They just threw the ball all over people and had an elite defense, right? I mean, so you can win a championship without having an elite run game. Michigan wasn't an elite running team last year. Matter of fact, Michigan was a better running team in the 2 years they got beat in the semis than they were the year they won a title. But they were so good everywhere. But right now, the run game's not going to be such a dominant unit that it can elevate you to a championship if you're not good enough other areas. And that's what I view. They're not close to that. A year from now, I project that I will say 5, because that offensive line is going to have a year under their belt. Love's going to come back. Price is going to come back, et cetera, et cetera. Right now, I'm a solid right in the middle 4. That's where I'm at with that group right now. What say you?
I'm not going to relitigate everything you just said, because we're right in the same neighborhood as a 4. And the reasons why, I think that it's a high bar to be a championship level, like a championship winning level run game. Like, a lot has to go right. I need more experience on the offensive line for that to be the case. Don't have it yet. And question marks, I will just say. I mean, and part of that has to do with experience, and part of that has to do with guys moving to different positions and all of that, right? And so as of right now, I can't go 5. I mean, that's crazy talk. 4, I think, is legit. And all the reasons that you just said, Riley Leonard, man, like, that is one that really pushed it into the 4 category for me. And so, again, I'm not going to relitigate everything you just said, because I agree with
the conversation right now.
No, no.
I'm spending more time thinking about 3 than I am 5.
100%.
Right,
I had like 3 in pencil, but like 4 in pen. Like, that's kind of how I feel about
I was thinking 3,
situation.
honestly, as I thought through the line. It's good. It's going to be good. It's, because I think by the end of the year, it's going to be a 4, but early in the year, it may be a 3, because I'm thinking about the offensive line. But again, when I'm thinking through, it's like, okay, but what about number 13?
Yeah,
that's the deal.
That's the
That's
kicker.
the one.
Completely agree with you. And we'll get into some position group stuff where I'll go into a little bit more detail about why I'm at a 4 for this, because it's one position group in particular. But I feel good about a 4 here.
Yeah. Well, let's look at the pass game, Vince, because this
Yeah.
is an interesting one. Because the pass game there's so much more talent on this roster
Oh,
right now.
yes.
But there's also lots of questions because a lot of the pieces on the offensive side of the ball are kind of new together. We haven't seen together.
Sure.
So when you look at the pass game, what is your confidence level that this pass game is going to be able to play at a championship level, that it's going to be a good enough to where it can be a fuel to a deep playoff run, potentially in a championship? So where are you at with your confidence level for the Notre Dame wide receiver room? That means playing well in the big games, playing well in the big spotlight, clutch plays, all those type of things, production, all of it goes into that.
Well, and here's the thing for me. There's so many new parts, and so many question marks, but we did get a chance to see them in the spring. And I also know what Mike Denbrock brings to the table. And that right there is a very key component for me, is Mike Denbrock. And I know we talked more about coaching in the last segment, but that has a big part to play in the pass game efficiency and the pass game moments and the way the pass game is going to be drawn up to highlight what this team will be good at in the season. And I've seen enough. Like, look, we haven't seen Bo Collins in a Notre Dame uniform yet. You know, there's certain things that we haven't seen, right? But I've seen enough from the wide receiver group during the spring. I've seen enough from Riley Leonard on film. I've seen enough pass protection, you know, things like that. But the biggest key for me is what I've seen from Mike Denbrock from a play scheming / play calling scenario, that I think that this pass game is a 4 right now. They are a playoff ready pass game, but I think my anticipation is that they will be a 5 before it's all said and done, because I think that they can be that good. I think the talent level can be that good, but I haven't seen it yet. I haven't seen all the pieces and parts put together, which is why I'm not saying 5 right now, but I have a confidence level right now today based on the parts that I know about. Like, I know about the parts individually. I think that's the best way to put it. I know about the parts individually, and I feel really good about that. And so that's a 4. Once those parts come together, I feel like that's going to be a 5.
Yeah.
So right now I'm a 4. Does that make sense?
It does. It does. I'm a 3, actually. Now, this is one where I had to change my grade initially, because when I first sat down and thought about it, I was like, I'm at a 4 there. And I started saying a lot of things you said. I love the talent. I love this. I love that. This is all good. Mike Denbrock, this. But we don't really truly know how these pieces are going to go together. We haven't seen Bo Collins. We haven't seen Jordan Faison this spring. You know, we don't know what's the rotation like. Oh, Jaden Greathouse is the guy now. But what if the Notre Dame tries to force feed a rotation in the slot and Jaden doesn't get into the rhythm the way he did in the spring? Like, there's legitimate questions that we have to ask ourselves. You know, and the other thing too is the offensive line concerns me more early in pass pro than they do run game. Like, run game wise, I actually think they're going to run the ball relatively well early. My concern is, can they pass pro at a high level? And then also, I think Riley Leonard can be a star. I've seen Riley Leonard throw a grand total of 0 passes to the current group of wide receivers in any kind of high leverage practice situation, much less a game. So I don't disagree with your projection ultimately, Vince, but for right now, they got a long way to go to get there. I have a lot of confidence that they will be. So the point is, if we were projecting, I would be solid 4 and saying, if this and this happens, maybe 5. I don't know that I'll ever truly get to 5 this year, because I don't know that they're going to have that true star in the pass game. And with all due respect to Mitchell Evans and Jaden Greathouse, Jaden may get there in 2025, but he's going to be there as a true sophomore. That I don't know. And so there's enough of that to say right now it's a 3. It's good. It's going to be good. It's going to be better. Like, last year's pass game was like a 2, because in big games they were awful.
Yes.
I mean, they were really bad. I'm not concerned about that anymore. But I also can't project that they're going to be really, really good in those big games, because we haven't really seen it. So I think this is a more veteran receiving core, to your point. They have more weapons out of the backfield. They have an offensive coordinator that has a better track record of success. And so all those, the depth is so much better. So all those reasons are why I'm still not a 2. like they were last year. I'm at a 3. And because like, yeah, I'd had questions about the coaching, all of it. Now, excellent receivers coach from a technical standpoint, really good OC, quarterback can spin it, deep, talented veteran receiving core with some talented youngster. The pieces are there. But for me to go 4 or 5, for me, right? This is my opinion, Vince.
Oh yeah, no,
I got to project a lot to get to 4 and project a ton to get to 5. That's where I'm at. Now, if we were doing a show of where we're projecting our confidence level of what we think the unit will be, same page, man. 4. So that's where I'm at, and that's kind of where I'm there. Let's go position by position, Vince, and just kind of go through. What is the starter? It's a combination of how you feel about the starter, or starters, how you feel about the depth, how you feel they come together. Do they have the overall talent, depth, experience, all those factors to play to their best, to their potential? And is their potential, what is their potential? So that's kind of, and also the position group includes coaching. This is a bigger picture. Look at each position group. That also includes coaching. So let's go down. We'll go quarterbacks, running backs, receivers, tight ends, offensive line. Let's start with quarterback, Vince. What's your confidence level that this team is going to have the necessary play at quarterback this season and all that entails to achieve their maximum success as a football team and then as a position group?
Yeah. So we've talked about this numerous times. This is the deepest quarterback room that Notre Dame's had in a long, long time. If you go 1 through 4, okay. However you rank your 1 through 4, 1 through 4 is a great room, okay. I have to look at it from a starter standpoint, okay, and I also have to look at it from who I think may be the backup, and because that backup is probably going to have to play maybe a game or two, depending. I mean, it's a long season, right? I mean, quarterbacks get hurt; they're out for a game. You know, somebody's got to come in, somebody's got to step up. I have a lot of confidence in the depth on this team, okay? I have a lot of confidence in the starter, which is Riley Leonard. Yes, I know he has an ankle issue, okay? I'm not blind to the ankle issue, okay? I'm not. But what we're hearing from Marcus Freeman, from people in the program, he's good. He's ready to go. He's ready to rock and roll, okay? So that's what I have to look at here today in June. He's 100%. He's ready to go. Okay. Like I said, I also like the depth. I think, and people forget about the projections that people had for Riley Leonard going into his junior year in the NFL and all of these different things. And all they can remember is that he got hurt and all of that. It's a 4 for me. Like, this is a playoff level group, in my opinion. If Riley Leonard goes down, I have confidence that who I have at number 2 can still get them to the
Steve
playoff.
Angeli can get Notre Dame to the playoff.
There you go.
Right.
So
Kenny
I have
can get them to the playoff
in the depth.
Right. CJ Carr can get them to the playoff. 100 agree.
Yeah. So it's a 4 for me. Point. And, you know, let's see how he or they play as things move forward. Maybe that elevates to a 5 because it's going to need to be a 5 if they want to win a championship. I mean, you need championship level quarterback play. I don't, you know, there's an outlier, I'm sure, out there. Notre Dame needs a championship level quarterback to play for a championship. So let's see what happens.
Their roster isn't like what Michigan, like what Georgia's was in 21.
Right.
Their schedule isn't like what Michigan's was last year.
Correct.
You are spot on. They need that. I'm at a 4 as well, Vince. Okay. We're on the same page there. It's for the reasons you mentioned. I'd also throw this 2 points. One is if Riley Leonard would have played all of last year and still transferred to Notre Dame, I'm probably at a 5 because I think he would have been considered one of the 5 best quarterbacks in college football. I think the only reason he's not considered that is because he missed a chunk of last year. Sure. I think that's a big part of it. And we didn't really get to see him get into ACC play healthy. That's when his numbers would have exploded at that point in time. So when I look at it, I see a starter that has top 10 quarterback in the country talent. I see guys that you can win with off the bench from a 10-plus win standpoint. Yep. I say a similar thing about Steve Angeli that I said about Drew Pine. And I said, you know, Drew Pine can get you to 10-2 in 2022, but he can't get you past that. And Drew went 8-2 as a starter in 2022, you know, and So that's exactly kind of what he was. And then you look at when you look at this football team, Vince, and you look at Steve Angeli. I think Steve Angeli has better tools than Drew Pine. So if Drew Pine can get you to 10-2, there's no reason Steve can't get you to 10-2.
Sure.
Maybe 11. I mean, look, Ian Book went 12 and went undefeated in the regular season twice.
It's true.
So it's good enough to be that 100%. Kenny Minchie can lead you there. CJ can lead you there. I also don't. The other part too is now we're going into year 2 of Gino Guidugli's tenure. That matters.
Yeah, it matters.
Year 2 under a coaching staff matters. Look at the jump that Mike Mickens' group made in year 2, right? In 2021, even with not nearly the talent they have now, you saw a jump in coverage. You look at what Al Washington's group did in year 2 and how much better that group was in 2023 compared to 2022. You look at all those factors, Vince, and it's just like, okay, like as good as Dylan McCullough was in 2022, his unit was even better in 2023. Good coaches are always going to be better the more time they have with a group. And that matters. That factors in as well. So that's the only thing I would really add to that, Vince, is that aspect of, Gino Guidugli being in year 2 gets me there. Now, again, I'm not talking about 5 right now because they've got a lot to prove. But part of my confidence in this football team as a whole is this right here. It's my confidence in the quarterback room. Yeah. The reason I have Notre Dame as a playoff team this year is this group right here. Mm-hmm. And so, what about Riley Leonard's ankle? That goes back to Vince's point. Now, if you lose him for a whole season, that would be problematic. But if you got to go 4 or 5 weeks without Riley Leonard, it's not ideal. But Steve Angeli can win you some games. CJ Carr can win you some games. Kenny Minchie can win you some games. There's no doubt in my mind. So, I feel good about being a 4.
Yeah. So let's go, I guess, beside the quarterback. Let's talk running backs.
Sometimes beside, sometimes behind.
Yeah, I was like,
sometimes out wide. Yeah.
Depends on what you want to do. So running backs, Brian, where do you see the running backs? I'm very interested to see where you go with this.
This is probably going to shock people, but I'm at a 5. I think this is one of the best running back rooms in college football. And here's the reason why. This is the one position, Vince, you know this. I have been consistent about this since we've known each other. I give zero thought into experience at running back.
Yep. I
just don't care. We have seen it over and over again over the years. Rookie running backs, it's just a different game. I remember my first full, it was my second year coaching, but my first full year where I was like fully in charge of a position group, and I coached running backs. And I remember the advice the offensive coordinator gave me. He said, he talked about, I was talking about my game plan and all this kind of stuff. He's like, oh, it's all great. These drills are awesome. This is great stuff. He said, but here's the thing that I'll do. Because I was working on some other stuff, like, working on once they get the ball, we'll work. He's like, all this stuff is great. Footwork, all this. But once they get the ball, leave them alone. Just point them where they need to go and make sure they know the proper technique to get there. Once they get the ball, leave them alone. You know what I mean? Like, don't make them overthink it. We want them – because it's just such a position that requires just the feel is so much more important, and the vision is so much more important. And when I look at this room, I think Jeremiah's a stud. I think Jadarian's a stud. I mean, I think if either one of those guys had to be the guy, I think their overall production would be very similar to Audrick's. Now, I don't think either of them would rush for almost 1,400 yards, but I'm talking total offense. So Jadarian would have maybe 150 to 200 less rushing yards than Audrick, but I think he'd have 150 to 200 more receiving yards than Audrick. Same with Jeremiah. And so you've got 2 studs there that are explosive home run hitters, and that's just the beginning. You've got 2 incredibly talented freshmen that in other years could probably come in and be the number 2, if not the number 1 on this football team. That's how good Kedron Young and Aeneas Williams are. In a lot of years in the past, they are coming in and day 1 and they're at least number 2s. And the starter better not get hurt. That would be the thing, right? I mean, in 2021, you're telling me neither one of these kids could have been the number 2 running back in Notre Dame, or in 2020 or in 2019, that there's not a chance that Kedron Young wouldn't have beat out Tony Jones at some point. Like when Tony got hurt, remember that? You're telling me there's not a chance that by the time Tony got back to full health, that job might have been gone. It's possible. I thought Tony Jones had a heck of a season in 2019. But Kedron Young is like Tony Jones with way more speed. You know what I mean? Like that, they're absolutely loaded. And you're in a situation where you can lose a guy like Jabron Payne and move a safety who played running back in college, who was a top 100 recruit coming in, who was a running back for you last year, move him back over. And that's your 5.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I mean, they're absolutely loaded. And they got a kid transferred in from Colgate, and Max Hurleman is a walk-on who caught like 30 balls last year at that level. Like, that's your 6. Justin Fisher's your 6 or 7. That guy's a heck of a football player, Vince. You know, you got Jake Tefelsky came in as a walk-on, and he's a kid that's going to be a special teams dude for you this year. Like, this is an incredibly loaded running back room, and they don't have the experience of other groups, but the talent and all that's there. And the other thing is, this is still a group of players that has over 1,000 yards of offense last season coming back. So it's not like they lack experience, period. They don't have experience being the guy. But Jadarian, I'll put it to you like this. In 2022, Notre Dame's 2 running backs combined for over 1,700 yards. Audric ran for over 900 yards, and Logan ran for over 800 yards. They combined for 1,744 yards and 15 touchdowns. The year before, that duo combined for 290 yards and 3 touchdowns. That's it. Jadarian Price and Jeremiah Love last year combined for 657 yards and 4 touchdowns rushing. So like almost 3 times as much production of what Logan and Audric had going into 2022 when they formed a very potent duo. So experience doesn't matter at running back, talent does. And this unit has talent in droves. So that's why, and this is the only offensive position group that I'm there at this point in time.
I'm only laughing because that was going to be my next sentence, because I was going to say, this is my only 5. And of the whole offensive side of the football. And because you're like, oh, this is going to surprise people that this is a 5. Doesn't surprise me. I got a 5 written down right here next to RB. My whole thing, and you were very eloquent about the way you went about it, but if you pick up Notre Dame's running back room and you put them on any team in the country, they're still the best group. Like, they can fit into, like, if you think that Georgia's the number 1 team in the country, you put Notre Dame's running back room for Georgia, they don't miss a beat, and they might actually even be better, right? That's why this group is a 5. This is a championship level group. It's deep, it's talented, and it's my only 5. I mean, that's not exactly giving much away, but it's my only 5 as well. Brian, it's just hilarious that you ended your speech with that sentence.
This is why shows with us are so good, man, because we're just like I've had people say to me, like, why does Vince afraid to disagree with you? I'm like, well, he's not. Like, Vince, first of all, that's how Vince is with everybody. Vince is just an agreeable person. But more often than not, it's not Vince is just agreeing with me just to agree. It's like this, we kind of think alike in a lot of ways, whether it's politically or historically or coaching-wise, philosophy, football. This is why we get along so well. But no, I mean, this is a loaded group. And I would be borderline 5 if it was just the 2.
Right. And you had the freshmen. It's like,
if there's a situation this year where Notre Dame's got to go 2-3 games with Kedron and Aeneas, or Aeneas and Kedron as your 2, I'm like, all right, cool, let's go.
Let's go.
I mean, we're good.
100%.
Yeah, so it's a heck of a group. So,
all right,
Vince,
go.
Here's the next one. This is going to be but you were interested to see what I said at running back. And especially after your pass game comments, I'm very interested to see where you are a wide receiver. When you talk about, I mean, this is a group that's completely different than it was last year. New position coach, 3 new transfers, 2 of which we've seen, 1 of which we haven't. You got 2 rising sophomores, another sophomore that missed all last year with an injury. You've got 2 veterans coming back, and you've got 2 very talented high school kids that we've already seen, and then another showed up this past week. So there's a lot to like, also a lot of questions, but where are you, Vince, when you look at, can this receiving core be a driver of success for this football team? Can this receiving core play to its potential? What's your confidence level that all of that happens?
So I think I may have mentioned earlier that I can't remember what group it was at this point, but it was a group where I'm going to give a grade, but I fully anticipate that it's going to rise and it's going to rise quickly. And that falls under this category, to be perfectly honest with you. You outlined perfectly all the question marks that surround this group right now. Brand new coach, all the transfers out, transfers in, youth, all of those different things. So for me, it's a 3. It's a 3 right now. As we sit here in June, it's a 3. Now, again, after 2 weeks of fall camp and I'm watching these guys run around and I'm watching them catch balls from Riley Leonard, it's going to pretty quickly move to a 4. Okay. But right now, because of all I haven't even seen Bo Collins put on a gold helmet yet outside of his recruiting visit, right? I need to see some more. I need to see this group work together. I need to see them work under Mike Denbrock's offense, okay? I need to see some of these things to make me feel better. I have a lot of confidence in what this group will become, okay? And we saw spurts of it during spring ball, but every ball they caught was from a quarterback they're probably not going to be catching balls from during the regular season this year. Maybe in the future, but not this year. And so that I'm very close to a 4. But right now, I've got to hedge my bets, and I'm going to say a 3 right now. And I think it'll be a 4 a month and a half from right now when we're halfway through, or 2 months from now when we're halfway through fall camp. I feel like, okay, I see what I need to see. This is a 4. This is a playoff caliber group, and in pieces they are right now. But as a group, I got to give them a 3.
It's interesting you say that because I was expecting you to say a lot more. I'm at a 3 as well, and I think this group has really good potential, like 4+ potential. Yes. But again, we're talking about right now. And right now, I don't know what Chris Mitchell is going to do in a Notre Dame uniform on a week-to-week basis. I know what he did at FIU, and he's really good.
Yeah.
I think Bo Collins has a chance to be really good at Notre Dame. Mm-hmm. I do, but I need to see it. I need to see if Jaden Thomas and Bo Collins can stay healthy. I need to see if Jaden Thomas can take he was a dude in the spring. Can he build on that? And I still don't know what the rotation is going to look like right now. I mean, there's a concern I have there because the concern could be you've got so many kids that are good enough to play that you can kind of overdo the rotation. And that's what they did last year. I have no problem playing 6 receivers in a game, but I despise. I mean, Vince, how pissed would I get in the middle of a game, especially when we were outside and I could be more vocal? When I'd be like, every play, somebody's freaking running it. Like a whole group of new pass catchers are coming out. It's like, what the heck are you doing?
They would change almost every skill position except the quarterback at times.
Now, that group of coaches is gone. The OC and the receivers coach is gone. But I don't know how Mike Brown's going to – Mike Brown's never had this kind of depth. Now, he's had really good top 4 at Cincinnati. He had a really good top 4 at Cincinnati. I mean, he not only had the starters, Alec Pierce, Tyler Scott, and Trey Taylor, but he also had Michael Young, who was their leading receiver against Georgia in the Peach Bowl the year before and against Bama in the playoff. Michael Young, who transferred from Notre Dame. So everything about this receiving core that excites me, Vince, because this is the concern with this format of the show with this group. I think it's a fun format. I'm having fun talking about this stuff, and I hope you are too.
Yeah.
But the issue is there are certain groups where it's going to be like, well, I thought you were high on that group. I am. Well, why'd you go 3? Because me being high on them is more about projecting what I think they're going to do, not what they are, what I know they are today. Because what I know they are today is a talented group with great depth that I'm just not sure how it's all going to fit together. Mm-hmm. And when I watch guys play well in the spring game, and I watch guys play in the blue gold game, and I watch guys play with a couple practices, what I didn't see? Them catching passes from Riley Leonard. But that's where I was surprised because you went with 4 on the pass game.
I did.
So it tells me a lot about what you think about the running backs, quarterback, and tight ends.
Yep.
And that's the next group we're going to talk about, Vince, which I think translates really this is a smooth transition to that. So let's just kind of dive into that, Vince, of where you are when it comes to the tight end group. Because, like I said, I have a feeling I know we're going to go because of what your pass game grade was. And now what your receiver grade was, that this is going to be something that maybe makes up for some of those question marks at receiver?
I have a good deal of confidence in the tight end room. Now, obviously, injuries are part of it. There's no doubt about it. But we were told by Marcus Freeman that Mitchell Evans is going to be good to go when camp starts. And that's all I needed to hear, because I thought that he was going to be kind of held out until maybe even, like October or whatever. But they said he's going to be good to go for camp, and that, okay, let's roll then. And so when you look at the tight end room and you look at who Notre Dame has coming back, obviously Mitchell Evans and Eli Raridan, those are going to be your 1-2. But then you look at the depth, right? I really like Jack Larson. I really like Cooper Flanagan. Okay, I like both of those guys, whoever becomes 3, whoever becomes 4. And this team isn't going to be a 12 and 13 personnel type team. Now, they'll dabble in it, on the goal line or short yardage or whatever, and that's fine. But I like the depth at tight end right now. I like the talent level at tight end. You could even throw in Davis Sherwood if you wanted to, because he's a really good blocker and he can sneak out and do some different things on the goal line. But I like this tight end group. I think they're athletic. Okay, I think they can catch balls out of the backfield, or I think they can catch balls, right? And we're talking out of the backfield, you know what I mean?
But I think in certain roles they could. I mean,
they could. It could be an H back.
Like seriously, like yeah. Yes. Well, and then I laugh because one of the plays I'm going to break down on the summer is they run a lot of split flow zone with their tight end coming backside, and they'll do a lot of RPOs off of that, where he'll run that little underscreen. And that's out of the backfield.
Yeah.
So I'm just kind of laughing. You're like, wait a minute, no. And I'm like, no, Vince, you're actually good. They will catch a lot of balls on the backfield. So you're actually solid there.
I think that they're going to be a weapon. They're going to be a true weapon in this offense for sure. Even though there won't be 3 of them on the field at the same time, they're going to be a weapon in this offense. And so it's a 4 for me for this group. I think that they can definitely get you to the playoff. If you look at the 12 teams that are going to be in the playoff, whoever those 12 teams are, Notre Dame's going to be in the top third from a tight end standpoint. From a depth standpoint, from a starter standpoint, however you want to look at, Notre Dame will be in the top 4 in the tight end room. So that's a playoff caliber group to me. And so that's a 4.
This is the group to me that has the biggest what it is now and what it could be. And what it is now to 3. And what it could be a 5. I mean, this could end up being the best tight end room in college football. Matter of fact, I'll just say this. If this group can stay healthy as a unit, if they can stay healthy,
that's a big key.
Entire season, they're going to be a 5. They're going to be the best tight end room in college football. Wholeheartedly believe that. But I don't know if they will be. And the starter right now didn't practice in the spring, has never played more than 8 games as a regular. I mean, each last 2 years. As a regular, he's 8 games. He played 12 as a freshman when he didn't have to play a whole lot. But he's 8-8. Eli Raridan, kid has been at Notre Dame now going in his 3rd year. In the last 4 years, he's torn the one ACL twice. He's also never played a full season. He had played like 5 and 9, I think, something like that, right? The last 2 years. And Cooper Flanagan didn't play a ton last year. So I love the talent. I love the depth. And Jack Larson, I thought Jack Larson was the guy that was going to need time, maybe a couple years. But look, if you have to play Jack Larson in 2024 because of issues in the tight end room of injuries, all right. Like he's not going to be a dominant blocker, but that kid's going to catch the football. You've got a guy like Henry Garrity's probably still a year away from helping you, but he can help you. Davis Sherwood's played a lot of football at Notre Dame. So I love this room from a talent standpoint. There's just way too many injury history question marks, Vince. I don't know that they're going to stay healthy. And this is really what the offense comes down to, Vince, is these 2 positions, these 3 positions, receiver, tight end, and O-line we're going to talk about, those are the big questions about this team. The talent is there for all of them to be special, but there's just different factors with each group. Receiver, it's okay. I just need to see them as a unit. How do they play together as a unit with all the new faces? Cool. O-line, very talented, but they're inexperienced. This one's easy. Are they going to be healthy? If you told me right now, Brian, I looked into the crystal ball and I can tell you with certainty that Mitchell Evans and Eli Raridan and Cooper Flanagan are going to play every game this year in the regular season. I'm like, all right, 5. All right, 5. Because all 3 of them can be starters for 90+% of the teams that they play this year.
Oh, yeah.
And the first 2 could start for probably anybody that they play this year. Yep. And the first 2 tight ends have All-American talent. But Eli Raridan has 5 career catches. So I got to see that he can be the guy if Mitchell goes down. I know that he has a talent to do so, but I need to see it. So that's really where I'm at, Vince, is I love the group. I love the talent. I love the depth. It's just the injury history scares the heck out of me. You can say, well, if Mitchell goes down, they're going to be fine. Yeah, but what if Mitchell and Eli go down? Again, that's why I'm going to 3 it. Because right now, what I know right now is they're both injury concerns. But if I know that they're not, 3 shoots up 5 as fast as Rocket Ismail's 40. I mean, that's how quickly go from 3 to 5, in my opinion. But today, June 13th, of what we know about this group, their starter's not even cleared right now. So how can I say they're a 5 right now today when their starter's not even cleared?
Right. Yeah.
So that's where I'm at.
So the next one is going to be interesting because, again, we're not projecting to the season, and we're not projecting to the middle of the season, and we're not projecting to the end of the season. We're talking about right now. And this is a group that gets a lot of conversation, a lot of question marks moving forward. And we're talking about the offensive line here. We've got some returning starters, kind of. We've got, guys that started
your entire starting lineup from the bowl game is back.
Fair enough. So offensive line, what say you on this group?
This is going to sound completely nuts, but I'm actually at a 4.
Wow.
I am. Yeah. I'm at a 4 because and I'm trying not to project, but I can't help it with this group. I'm just being honest because I love the talent of this group, and I think the interior right now is excellent. It is. Now, the pushback you could say is, well, we don't know who the left guard is going to be, and that's where I'm kind of projecting a little bit. So I'm not projecting that people are going to play better, but I am projecting that Rocco's going to win that job. Or if he doesn't, it's because Pat really takes off. Right. One of those 2 things is going to happen. So I am projecting that, just to be honest, because at some point you have to sort of do that. I think Ashton Craig is really good. I think Billy Schrouth has already shown himself to be, this spring he was a dude.
Yes, he was.
I think Charles Jagasol is a really good player. Saw a lot that I like from him. He's going to continue to get better and better and better. And 1 of 2 things happens at right tackle. Tosh Baker plays like he did a lot in the bowl game, which is good enough to go out and have 460-some yards and 40 points and 200-plus rushing yards against Oregon State. Or he gets beat out by somebody better. That's where we're at. So if I'm just talking about if all 5 projected starters, you could say if they all reach their potential, what is the O-line? It's a 5. I've already said, Vince, in a show I did a week or 2 ago, I said, I think this unit's going to be the favorite to win the Joe Moore Award in 25 because I think they're going to be that good. There's a chance that all 5 starters could be back that year. But because if Tosh gets beat out, at least 4 are going to be back. And a couple of them are going to become stars. So the talent is elite. The experience is like a 2. The talent is a 5. The depth is a 5. Like, they could lose a guy everywhere and be just fine. There aren't a lot of teams that can lose a starting offensive lineman and like, oh, shoot, Ashton Craig got hurt. Guess we have to slide Pat Coogan into that spot, or guess we have to put Sam Pendleton in the game. Your right tackle goes down. Oh, I guess we're going to have to go to Emil Wagner or Gerby Lambert. Oh, shucks. And some of the depth guys I wasn't even that high on, Christopher Tarrick being one, I thought he was really good in the spring game. He graded out over 90% for me in that game. And he's a 330-plus pound kid. So in your left guard's either going to be a returning 13-game starter or a returning 10-game starter. So that's where it was hard for me, Vince, is talent is 5, experience is 2. Where do I settle? Borderline 3-4 for me. Now, again, right now it's way closer to 3 than it is 5 because of the experience. And honestly, that would be, if you were to tell me 3, I'm curious to hear what you say. I'm not going to push back at all because that experience thing at this position is incredibly important. But I just look at this group, Vince, and because I am projecting, honestly, I'm being honest about it, I am projecting the left guard position to be what it is. I think that's going to, like, if what I think happens is going to happen at guard happens, Notre Dame's going to have one of the best interiors in college football this year. I just believe that to be true.
I told you guys up front I don't have any 1s, and that's true. I also don't have any 2s, so that's also true. But With this group, I mean, you're breaking your own rules, but it's okay. I still love you.
Well, it's because I couldn't find a way. No. It's fair. I'm not pulling one of those. It's my show. I'll do it if I want to. I'm not doing that. I'm just saying I don't know how to discuss this group without having some level of projection. So I am at least being honest about it. But that's a very, very little back of the hand to me there, Vince. I kind of dig that. This is why I love doing shows with you instead of solo shows. It's so much more fun.
It's great. But for all the reasons, because you basically explained why you could have gone 3 and why you did go 4, and those are the reasons I went 3. Okay, because there are some question marks there. I love the interior talent. I think they are possibly one of the deepest teams in the country at interior talent. I love the interior talent, and you make a great point where if Rocco starts at left guard, great. If he doesn't start, that means Pat Coogan played better. Awesome. If Tosh Baker starts at right tackle, great. If he doesn't, that means somebody's better, even better. So I do like, it's not like two, weak guys are competing for one spot and it's like, the lesser of two evils that you're throwing on the line. That's not the case.
Yeah. Which bum's going to start?
Right. And believe me, we've had that conversation.
We've been there somewhat recently. Let's not get Vince started on that one. Okay. I don't want to have any Kane Madden references in the show. Okay.
I wasn't going to go there. But what I will say is the only reason there are 3 right now is because of the question marks. I'm just not sure yet. And I think that the beginning of the season, there's going to be some rough moments, but that happens every single time that an offensive line gets together for the first time, regardless of how talented they are. It takes a couple games to get, just get things under their belt and get their, their sea legs and all of whatever analogy that you want to use. That's expected. That is going to happen. What I care about is where this offensive line is going to be in week 5, 6, 7, and beyond. That's what I care about, but that's not today. And so today, if they were playing a game tomorrow, I'd be a little nervous about what the offensive line is going to look like. And so that's why they're a 3 for me. They're a top 25 offensive line today, but I anticipate that number growing once we get to the middle of the season. Like, it's not going to be a situation where we're watching the right guard on skates every week. And it's just like, man, can they do something to mitigate this problem? Like, I don't see that being the case. I see this offensive line gelling, whoever the 5 are and whatever positions that they're in, they're going to gel. They're going to be just fine and could end up being a strength of this team when you consider the guys that are going to be running through the holes that they're creating. And so I feel good about it, but I just feel like right now I'm not prepared to go to a 4 just yet.
Get that.
I'm at a 3.
I said I was not going to argue with you, but no, I'm kidding. No, I totally get that. Experience is so important to this position, Vince.
Yeah,
so important.
Exactly. Right.
And it's not true at every position. Quarterback, it matters. O-line, it matters. D-line, to me, to a degree, it matters. Linebacker, to a degree, it matters. To a degree.
Right.
I don't care about experience at receiver as much. A little bit, but not as much. I don't care about experience at all at running back. I don't care as much about it at corner. I just don't. And why is that? What's that based on? My knowledge of the game and what goes into each position, but also I follow football. Where are the positions where freshmen usually make the biggest impact? Running back, receiver, corner. You don't see a lot of freshmen starting off. I mean, Quentin Nelson in the last decade couldn't start as a true freshman. Didn't see the field as a true freshman. So it's different. It really is. The only caveat for me is because we did see this group together. If we hadn't seen this group together in the bowl game, I'd be at a 3. Yeah, that's a big thing for me. If we didn't see Ashton and Billy late in the year, I'd be at a 3.
Good point.
Honestly, that's what makes this different than maybe past units where I would have immediately gone to 3 and maybe
you don't have
2.
any game time with them all together.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, I watched this group. I mean, with Billy Schrouth, I mean, I've talked about this before, Vince. You want to hear a stat, right? Here's a stat for you. You know me, I love data, right? Back up your opinion with data. So we saw Billy Schrouth and Ashton Craig in the starting lineup together for 3 games, right? So last year, in the 3 games that those 2 kids played together, Notre Dame last year offensively rushed Vince for 251.3 yards per game. in 3 games with those two kids as starters. And in one game where we saw Charles Jagasol at left tackle, Tosh Baker at right tackle, Pat Coogan at left guard, Billy Shrouth at right guard, and Ashton Craig at center, we saw this Notre Dame football team last year go out and rush for 236 yards and average 4.9 yards per carry against Oregon State. We've seen it, at least a little sliver. And that's what gives me that's all honestly the thing that did push me into there. But as you said, if you're going to push back to me, well, Brian, you've always said not to put too much in the bowl games. 100% correct. 100% correct. And so
it's a data point.
That's why I would not argue and say you're wrong or I think you should move to 4. Totally get it. I actually am admitting I think I'm over my expectations are higher maybe than they should be for this line right now. And at the end of the day, the one thing we didn't talk about is that whether it ends up being a 3 or a 4, the performance of Joe Rudolph is going to have a lot to do with that.
100%.
A lot to do with that. So that's going to do it for the offensive part of this show, folks. We're going to do defense next, and I'm very much looking forward to that group because I think we might fly through that one a little bit more, Vince, because I don't think there's going to be a lot of disagreement. I don't believe on that one. But we're going to get to that next. But before we do, folks, do us a favor. Hit that like button. Hit the subscribe button. Hit the notification bell. Share this podcast. Ryan now has some data on the message board, some intel on Jadon Blair and John Anthony Hall. And soon he's going to have something on Dylan Robinson. And let's just say things went really, really well this week. And also has some data on, or has some intel on there about a surprise visitor that was on campus this week. Someone who's from the Notre Dame class already. So you're going to want to check that out all that at boards.irishbreakdown.com. It's the best way to support Irish Breakdown is by being a part of our Irish Breakdown community. You can subscribe for a monthly membership, annual membership, or join our booster club. And if you join our booster club, you get some pretty cool merch. You get a mug. If you're at Gold Club, you get any member, Shamrock, Blue, or Gold. You get an IB Club mug. Only IB Club members have that. Nobody else has that. But if you're a Gold Club member, you also get a free IB Gold Club T-shirt. So you get that as well. So you can find all that at boards.irishbreakdown.com.
Time for defense. And I think it's going to be interesting because we're doing confidence picks. And again, we're talking about our confidence right now coming out of spring, not what our confidence is going to be 2 months down the line when they're getting ready to play their first game. We're talking about confidence level right now. And based on everything that's happened with the defense up until this point, going into year 3 with Al Golden, with the talent that's over there, with the recruiting that has occurred, all of those different things. I just have a feeling that the confidence level is going to be fairly high across the board here. But hey, we don't know until we get into it. And so that's exactly what we're going to do. So we're going to go a little bit big picture to start off with, and then we'll jump into the position groups. So before we get into position groups, let's talk about run defense, Brian. And there's obviously some potential stats to go here and things of that nature, but your run defense, where's your head at here with how they're going to stop the run this year?
Well, very soon, Vince, you and I are going to have one of our segments we're going to do is going to be breaking down the run defense, where it is, where it needs to get to. I've actually done some stats to back this up a little bit. So we'll rehash some of those stats. I did that somewhat recently within the last month. I did that. And so we'll rehash the stats, but then we'll talk more about, okay, what do they need to do to get to the level of those other top teams? So we will have that conversation. So just right now, big picture, Vince, I'm at a solid mid 4, maybe lean towards low 4, but I'm at a solid mid 4. And a lot of it's going to have to do with the first 2 position groups that we talk about. But when I look at the defense last year, they were a 4 run defense last year, Vince. To me, they were playoff caliber last year on run defense. They weren't great, but they were good. They had a couple games where, they weren't great. They weren't very good against Louisville. They weren't great against Clemson. Outside of that, they were pretty good. They did a really nice job shutting Ohio State only rushed for 126 yards, and 60 of that came on 1 carry. They did a good job keeping Duke in check with the exception of the quarterback. If you take Riley Leonard out of that, the run game couldn't do anything. And some of the run production they gave up yards wise were actually in the pass game. It was Riley scrambling and taking off in the pass game. So you take out the one guy that hurt them last year for Duke, he's now your quarterback.
He's going to say he's playing for you now.
So they were good last year. I would lean more. So like to me, they're solid 4. If you were going to say which, if you can't pick 4, which way would you go? I'd go to a 3 before I'd go to a 5. This is the one area on defense where they need the most work, but they're still good.
Mm-hmm.
This is with most of the team. With most of the team, the question isn't, are they going to be good there? Like, it wasn't that long ago you and I were talking about, I don't know if they're going to be good at running back this year, or I don't know if they're going to be good at safety this year, or I don't know if they're going to be good at linebacker this year. That's not a question anymore. The question now is, how good are they going to be? Are they going to be 10-2 good, or play for the national title good, or somewhere in the middle good?
Yep.
It's going to be good.
Yeah.
It's just how good. And right now, this is a playoff caliber team. Now, if we were doing the ranking based off the Final Four playoff, that we were still in the 4, I'd probably, and that was what 4 was, I'd go 3.
Sure.
Because I don't know that it's good enough to fuel a playoff run like that yet. It's close though. But now in the 12-team playoff, it's an easy 4 for me because I think the run defense is going to be good enough to do that. That's where I'm at.
Yeah, you and I are on the same page. I had them as a 4. They're not ready to be a 5 just yet. I think there's still, some minor question marks at linebacker, and we'll get into that when we get to the position groupings, right? But for a run defense as a whole, I have it as a 4 too. I don't want to relitigate everything that you just said. I'm at a 4 as well, and I think it's a solid 4. Like I wasn't really hedging between a 3 or a 5. It's like 4. Like
right,
it's 4 all day. You know what I mean?
Right.
So I'm very confident in my 4.
So let's go pass game. Yeah. Go ahead. You had one more?
No. I was going to bring up the next
I got
group,
you.
So, yep.
Let's go pass game next, Vince. And there's 2 aspects of the pass game for defense, a little bit different than offense. And we could have done something with the offense where we could have said, hey, here's the thoughts on the pass game. We probably should have done this and say, ability of your pass catchers and then ability of your O-line. Pass pro of the O-line is my biggest concern on offense right now. Like that is my biggest concern.
I don't have a lot of fear in their run blocking.
I don't. Pass pro's a different deal.
Yeah.
And so where I'm at with that group, it's that's there. We did decide to split it on defense. So we'll start pass rush first, then go to pass coverage, Vince. But when you look at the pass rush, that's where we go next. The ability of this group, when it matters most, to go out there and pressure the quarterback when it matters most, whether it be the big games, bigger picture, but then also the bigger moments, and then just to be able to kind of overwhelm the opponents beneath them. What is your confidence level that Notre Dame is going to have? And I did a breakdown recently where I showed that the best defenses, the teams that win championships, their pass rush is better than what Notre Dame's has been in recent years. Even last year, although Notre Dame got a lot closer last year. What's your confidence, Vince, right now and where we are today that this unit will be better and get them closer to playing at that level?
Obviously the return of Riley Mills and Howard Cross, kind of solidifies this particular area for me. It's a 4. I don't think it's a 5 yet. I think there's still some question marks about Viper. What that's going to look like. Is there going to be the production there that you need in order to jump from a 4 to a 5? I feel really good about the interior. Obviously, I think they've got guys at big end that I like. I think that they're going to get after the quarterback. I think they're going to I think they're going to hurry the quarterback. I think they're going to pressure the quarterback. All of those different things. And look, we talked about yesterday. One of the buy, sell, hold ones was, who do you think is going to have more sacks, pressures, and whatever? The first team ends or the second team ends. And I was like, I'm holding because that may not even be the depth chart by the time we get to game 1. And so I think there's depth there. I'm excited about it, but there's still some question marks as to, are these guys, and I'm talking about the edge guys, are these guys ready to be your starters? Are these guys ready to be the guys that you're counting on to make big plays in the big moments? I think they've got the talent to do it, but I need to see it. So that's why I'm going with a 4 here, because I like the talent, but let's see if they're ready to be the man, so to speak. So I feel really good about a 4.
I'm with you. Yeah. I look, the interior guys to me are legit. And it's not just, only thing I would add on, it's not just Riley Mills and Howard.
Right.
Gabe Rubio, to a degree, but Jason Onye, what we saw from him in the spring, not what I'm projecting. I mean, we saw it from Jason in the spring.
Yep.
And not just in the spring game. We saw it in the blue gold, or we saw it in the jersey scrimmage. We saw it in practices. He is raised his level of play. We have 4 years of data of RJ Oben being a good pass rusher. We just do. So you were a 4 last year. So, well, what about Jordan Mattel? Okay, fair. But you were a 4 last year, and Jordan Mattel was terrible. Like, he can't be worse.
Right.
You know? So, and I expect him to be better. He was better this spring. And so I'm 4. I'm at a 4. Could they get to a 5? Maybe. But they're at a 4. The other reason I have them at a 4 now, too, and here's the other reason I think maybe they get to, there's a few reasons they can maybe get to a 5. But another reason that they're a solid 4 is also Al Golden. Al Golden is very good at designing ways to get to the quarterback. With Al Golden, the defensive coordinator, you don't need a dominant pass rush group front 4 to get to the quarterback. He's shown we can get to the quarterback in a lot of different ways, and not with 6 and 7 man pressures like John Tenuta and Brian McGorder, with 4 and 5 man pressures,
right? Because
of the way he can find weak spots in your protection scheme, which is huge. And when I was a coach, the teams that gave us our most problems were teams that could exploit our protection. Not that because if you overwhelm us with numbers, almost every time I ever coach on, if you try to overwhelm us with numbers, you're going to get to our quarterback a couple times. But we're going to hit slants behind you. We're going to run away from it. We're going to catch you enough because we're so athletic. We're going to make you pay for that. You don't want to do that. You don't want to blitz us. But the good teams are the ones that could find that soft spot and bring 4 or 5 and maybe overload a side as opposed to overloading the whole thing. And Al Golden's masterful at that last year. Masterful. And now he's going to have a linebacker core that's bigger and longer and more explosive than what he had last year. So I view this as a good 4. I think the talent at linebacker combined with the potential that guys like Boubacar Traore and Josh Burnham and Bryce Young bring to the table are why I am even more confident in saying 4, but why it could maybe jump into 5. I'm not sure that it's going to get there yet, but those are the guys that are going to determine if they do get there or not. But I feel very good about saying 4 right now, Vince. No question about it. I'm with you on that.
I think for me, the climb from 4 to 5 is a longer climb than maybe it is for you.
Yes.
But that's, you know what I mean?
Well, and part of the reason, Vince, is because if you look at the data last year, the sack numbers weren't there yet. But if you look at the pressure numbers from Pro Football Focus, they were better than any top defense. If they had like the same number of pressure attempts as like teams like Michigan and UCLA and some of the teams that led that were the top pass rushers, they would have been top 2 or 3 in total pressures. I mean, their total pressure numbers last year were actually really good. They just weren't great at sacks, but they still had a lot of hits on the quarterbacks, and the pass rush was pretty good at times in some big moments. You know, I think when you think about the last drive of the Duke game, the pass rush had some plays that helped stall that last drive, and then of course it ended the game when they sacked Riley Leonard, hurt his ankle, and forced the fumble.
Sure.
The pass rush is ultimately why you beat USC. I mean, Xavier Watts had a big game, but the reason he was able to have a big game is because
of the
your
pressure.
pass rush was just overwhelmed.
Because he was just chucking it in the air, and Xavier Watts is in a great spot.
Pass rush is actually pretty decent against Clemson. It was the run game, the run defense that was more problematic against them. So, and I thought the defensive line played great against Duke. I thought the defensive line was pretty good early against Louisville after the first drive. They got some pressures. They weren't great. They weren't great against Ohio State late in the game, but they got a lot of pressure on him in the first 3.5 quarters. And then Ohio State did some nice things let's get the ball out quickly, max pro, a couple things like that. But I thought it was pretty good last year. I mean, and when you look at the numbers, so like last year, Notre Dame had 267 total pressures, and they had 92 total hits on the quarterback last season. And then in 2022, despite facing more dropbacks, they had 225 pressures and only 84 hits in the quarterback on, I think it was something like 70, 80 more dropbacks. So the total pressure numbers were great, even though the sack numbers weren't good. They got a lot of hits in the quarterback last year. So that's why I am very solid in them being 4. It just, to get to 5, you need some guys we haven't seen do anything yet, do something. That's what's needed. And that's why I can't go there.
Yeah,
for
no,
5.
I'm with you on that. But here's what else I will say, and this will transition into our next piece, where I will let you bat lead off. They don't have to be more than a 4, maybe touching 4.5, because of this next group. They don't have to be in order to be a championship level defense because of the pass coverage, which is our next group that we're going to talk about. And I'll let you lead off on that one.
I mean, this is a 5. I mean, this is an easy 5. I mean, they were a 5 last year. They were arguably the best pass defense in college football last year from a coverage standpoint. I mean, you look at where Notre Dame ranked last year, Vince, and in their pass defense. And again, this is playing a schedule where they had to play, NC State and Robert Anae. They had to play Ohio State, who had the number 4 overall draft pick, a wide receiver, and another receiver who's coming back, who actually hurt them a little bit in that game in some clutch moments, who's coming back, who is a preseason All-American caliber player, Nemeka Egbuka. They got a 5-star, Marvin Harrison last year was part of that group. They had Julian Fleming part of that group. Kate Stover, who was drafted at tight end, was part of that group, and they shut that down. I mean, the Marvin Harrison, the number 4 overall draft pick in this past year's draft, played against Notre Dame twice, played against Benjamin Morrison and Cam Hart twice, and he had he had less than 100 yards combined, not in each game, combined in 2 games against Notre Dame. He had less than 100 yards against them. This is a secondary that played against Clemson's receivers last year, who had some ability, not great. Played against completely shut down USC's receivers last year. You look at them and you say, the last couple of years, this secondary's faced some really good receivers. I mean, you think of Drake May in North Carolina. I mean, you look at CJ Stroud. I mean, the last 2 years, Notre Dame has faced a number 1 overall draft pick at quarterback, the number 2 overall draft pick at quarterback, and the number, what was Drake May, 3 overall draft pick. They've faced 3 top 3 picks in the NFL draft at quarterback, and their pass defense has still been one of the best in college football. And the only game that they didn't play great against USC was when they didn't have 2 of their best players didn't even play in the game.
Right.
So you've got one of the best cornerbacks in college football coming back in Benjamin Morrison. You've got one of the best safeties coming back in college football in Xavier Watts. You've got your other cornerback position, I think, is in a great position with Christian Gray and Jaden Mickey. And honestly, if you were to tell me that Benjamin Morrison's not going to play the first 4 games because of an injury, which is not what we're being told, I'd still say, okay, 5. Because again, Christian Gray, Benjamin Morrison is their best corner, and it's not arguable. Christian Gray is their most physically talented cornerback, and that's not arguable, in my opinion. You know who else would probably tell you that? Benjamin Morrison.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I mean, and then you got Jaden Mickey. Jaden Mickey would start for a lot of teams that Notre Dame would play. Christian Gray would be the best corner on most of the teams Notre Dame would play. And then, of course, you've got Chance Tucker, who gives depth. You've got Jordan Clark coming in, who's was a Power 5 starter for multiple years. You've got Rod Hurd coming in, who had over 80 tackles last year as a nickel. He comes in. Plus, you have some talented younger players. So just right now, where they are now, they're going to be faster and more athletic in the secondary than they were last year. And last year, Vince, Notre Dame in pass defense ranked 3rd in college football in yards allowed, ranked number 1 in college football in lowest quarterback rating, and the number 3 team was a lot closer to the number 2 team than the number 2 team was to Notre Dame. They tied with the national champs for the fewest touchdowns allowed in last season. They only gave up 8 passing touchdowns all season. They were 3rd in fewest yards allowed per attempt last season. And they ranked 2nd in college football last year in lowest completion percentage allowed. And 2 of their 3 best players come back from that unit. And you got 2 important transfers back. And I love Cam Hart. You were VP of the Cam Hart club. And we can tell you all now because she won't.
I got demoted.
No, you're still VP. You got demoted because Cam's mom listened to our show, and she let me know to tell Vince that he can't be president of the Cam Hart fan club because she was.
And hey,
Vince understood, and we love Cam's mom. She's a great lady. But
yeah, no doubt.
As good as he was, and we love him, Christian Gray, as from a physical talent, is every bit as good, if not better. And so look at the Pitt game again, Vince. This isn't projecting. Go watch the Pitt game last year. Pitt had a receiver get drafted. Bub Means got drafted this year. Benjamin Morrison didn't play. Cam Hart left the game in late first, early second quarter, didn't come back, and nobody noticed.
Right.
Nobody noticed. Why? Jaden Mickey, Christian Gray.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Jaden had a pick 6, and Christian had the most impressive interception Notre Dame cornerbacks had in forever. You know, I mean, they're going to be elite there. And they were elite last year. They're elite this year. Oh, and by the way, they have the best DB coach in college football coaching them.
Yeah.
Simple as that.
They also had the best defensive player in the nation also in that group.
I said simple as that as if like I just spent 30 seconds instead of 10 minutes talking about it. But yes, that's all the reasons why.
Yes.
They're I mean, the only question I have, Vince, is are they the best pass defense in college football or not? Not are they a 5 or a 4?
Right.
I mean, for me, is it them? Is it Ohio State? That's the conversation I'm having. Who has the best pass defense in college football? Is it Notre Dame or is it Ohio State? It's one of those two.
Right.
So it's not 5 or 4. It's are they number 1 or not?
Correct.
That's where they're at for me.
And they're absolutely championship level. Is there a slight question mark at the other safety? I don't care. Either one, they're going to fit in nicely.
Look at who they're replacing.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Right.
Right.
They're going to be just fine.
That other safety position cost you against Louisville and cost you
against
a big way against Ohio State.
Yeah.
Big way.
Yeah.
They're going to be better at safety this year. Yes.
I agree. It's a 5 for me. I'm not going to relitigate everything that you just said because it's a 5 because they're one of the best secondaries in the country, if not the best. So it's a huge 5 for me, and I'm fired up about it. So let's jump into the position groups. We're going to start at the front like we usually do. We're going to go defensive line, and we're talking all 4 across the front. Brian, what say you on the defensive line?
I'm at a 4 right now. I'm at a borderline 5, but I can't go to 5 yet because of the pass rush. Because yes, I think the pass rush is as a whole is really good because of Al Golden, because of the linebackers, because of his pressure packages. But do I think this D-line as a front 4 could go out there and just dominate the run game the way Michigan's did last year and Georgia's did in 21? No. Do I think that this pass rush is just turn this 4 loose against the best O-line and they're going to handle their business? No. It's just as a unit, it's really, really good. It's not elite yet. Now, if we were to separate between D tackle and D end, D tackle's a 5, D end's a 3. And that's where I get the 4.
Yep.
That's where I'm at.
Completely agree with that assessment. 5 and 3, average them together, it's a 4. I like the depth of the defensive line. I think that's a big part of the reason that they're a 4. If they were just starters only, that it wouldn't be a 4. If there was a huge drop off between the starters and the guys that were next, but I love the depth on this team. They can go 10 deep and still be very, very, very effective. And so part of that, like you said, can you just line up the 4 guys and just have them go up against the best offensive line in the country and be successful? Probably not. At times, yes.
Like by themselves, like shut them down, like just dominate the way Georgia did in 2021.
But you've also got one of the best defensive coordinators in the country that are going to do some scheme things that are going to allow that defensive line to do extremely well against the best offensive line in the country, whoever that happens to be. And so they have the talent there. They have the depth there. I'm not ready to go 5. It's a 4 for me, straight up. Let's see what happens in the season, but it's a 4 at the present.
The other thing for me, too, real quick, the other thing for me, too, is I have some questions about Coach Washington in the future because of things I've brought up, just his whole track record. We don't know if he can take a young group and turn them into, he's just never had a chance to show us one way or the other. But the one thing we do know is he can take a veteran group and turn it into a pretty darn good group. And he did it last year, and now he's kind of got everybody back. And I would argue that the transfer he got in this year is better than the transfer he got in last year. At least he was before he got here.
Sure.
And you say, well, I'm worried about Viper. I get that. Viper's the same exact position group of players that it was last year as it is now. And they had a top 10 defensive line last year. So the question is it top 5?
Right.
Yeah.
All right. Well, linebacker. This is an interesting one. Some new faces to talk about for sure from the faces that have been there in the past. You can make your arguments about athleticism, speed, recruiting rankings, all of those different things. What say you on the linebackers?
This is one, Vince, where I'm going to go 4. I'm going to go 4.
Okay.
The only pause that I have is just the lack of experience. And so my thought is, okay, can I go forward without projecting? And the answer ultimately is yes, I could. Because the talent and depth in the athleticism is just so good. That's really where I come down to. It just the talent's too good. When I look at Jack Kaiser and what he can do and some of those things, that's where I'm at. So I'm gonna go 4.
This one for me, when we're talking about defense and we're talking about how good this defense is, and I'm excited about this defense, and all of those things are all true. I hesitate to get overly excited about the linebackers because I am excited about it. But if we're just looking at it from a June 13th perspective, Brian said that the only way he would knock these guys down is from an experience level. That's where I'm at. There just isn't a lot of experience. I saw in the spring, too many mistakes from young linebackers. Now, those mistakes are going to go away, and they're probably going to go away sooner than later. They may even go away in fall camp, and I'll feel completely different about this, going into the season or early on in the season, all of that. The talent level at linebacker is absolutely undeniable. It's undeniable. These guys are fast, they're athletic, they're long, they were recruited in a manner that everybody's excited about. Their recruiting rankings are high, all of those different things. The potential of this linebacking core is immense. It's out of this world. There's no doubt about it. And I think, Jack Kaiser coming back is huge for this group from a leadership standpoint, from a voice in the room standpoint, from a getting everybody where they're supposed to be standpoint. I love this group's potential. I do. But that's the charge of this show, is that it's not about potential. It's about right now. And there's too many question marks from an inexperienced standpoint about this group. So I went with a 3 here. I feel pretty good about the 3, but I was on the fence between 3 and 4. Okay. If we're talking about this group next year, going into 25, I may be at a 5, to be honest with you. I may even be at a 5. But right now, because the only person with any kind of experience is Jack Kaiser, and he's probably going to be playing a different position than he played in the past, it's a 3 for me, which, by the way, a 3 is top 25, and I'm cool with that for right now. Again, by the end of fall camp, maybe I'm at a 4. First couple of games of the season, maybe I'm at a 4. Right now, I'm at a 3 because I've got way too many unanswered questions. I've seen the youth of this group make mistakes. And that's my issue with this group. Super high potential, super high talent level. Got to see them play together, right? I mean, there's a true freshman on there that people are ready to put in the College Football Hall of Fame already, right? In Kingston. I think he's going to be great. When he made plays and he was going the right direction, he's coming downhill and doing what he's supposed to do, he's unbelievable. When he makes mistakes, it's a very clear freshman mistake. You know what I mean? And so that's what worries me about this group, is the inexperience. I think they got all the talent in the world. I'm excited about the potential. It's probably going to be a 4 for me when we get to September. But right now it's a 3. And it's by far the lowest rated group that I've got on the defensive side of the football. And that doesn't mean that the defense isn't going to be good. That's the best part about this whole thing, is when you look at the defense as a whole, the guys surrounding the linebacking core, you've got experience all over the place. You've got guys who have done this at a high level for multiple years. You've got Al Golden, who's in the 3rd year of this defense as defensive coordinator. You've got all these wonderful things about this group, okay? And they can help this group along. because they're surrounded by all this talent and all this leadership and all of it. I mean, which is a great position to be in, because hopefully that allows this group to just play. It just allows this group to be athletic and fast and all of the different things that we just talked about, long. It allows them to do all of those things because of the talent that's around them. If this is a few years ago and it's a defense where, man, we got a lot of question marks about the defensive line, we got a lot of question marks about the secondary, and this linebacking core is going to have to grow up really, really fast in order to be a good defense, then I'm even more suspect about what things are going to look like. I think this 3 turns into a 4 very quickly because of the talent that's at linebacker, but also the talent and experience that surrounds this group and what they're going to allow this group to do. Because you can, send a linebacker here or there. You can just tell them, hey, man, you just need to get from point A to point B. Right now, we got you covered in the back, right? We need you to, hey, you've got B to B, right? You're the middle linebacker. You've got B to B. Just come downhill, make a play. They may not have to do as much thinking as other groups may have to do. You know what I mean? And so I feel pretty good about where this group is going to be. But today, June 13th, I feel like I've got to hedge my bets a little bit and say that it's a 3. And then we can kind of go from there as things get moving forward. So linebacker's a 3 for me. Linebacker was a 4 for Brian. Bottom line is this group is going to be a lot of fun to watch. They're going to be flying all over the field. Are they going to make some mistakes? Absolutely. They're young. It's going to happen. They're also going to make a lot of plays in the backfield, man. They're going to be coming downhill so fast. There's going to be a lot of oohs and ahs from the 80,000 that are going to be at Notre Dame Stadium. No doubt about that. It's going to be a fun group to watch for sure. And they're going to make more plays than they don't make, which is obviously also very, very important. So I'm excited about this group. But the 3 that I'm giving them does not temper my excitement about this group, because I'm extremely excited about where this group is going to be. I just need to see it again. If I was doing this next year, it might be a 5. Like, this group might be a 5. Okay, they might be championship level because these guys are going to get a lot of playing time over the next 6 months, right? It's going to be a lot of fun to watch. So, recap, Brian, I went with a 3, gave my reasons, mostly from an experience standpoint. If I was doing this next year, it might even be a 5 with this group. But at this point, I'm just hedging my bets a little bit, and I'm going to say a 3.
Talent, athleticism, depth.
Yep.
Is just, for me, too good.
Yeah,
and
I get that.
Experience matters, but it just doesn't matter enough to drop this group. It's not like it doesn't matter as much to me for, like, if the O-line isn't a 3 because of experience, there's no way I'm dropping the linebackers to a 3 for experience. I just don't. So and also, I gotta tell you, man, I've been impressed as heck with Max Bull as a position coach last year. Plus, you have Marcus Freeman helping out. You have Al Golden helping out.
Oh, yeah.
I think this group's going to be just fine. Yeah. Now, do I have questions? Sure. How's Jack going to slide in? But I just feel like there's 2. If he doesn't pan out, then okay, fine. Put Kingston in there. Put Jalen Snead in there. Put Jaden Osbury in there. Like, put Preston Zinner in there. Like, it doesn't matter. I mean, they're just so loaded that I can't go anything lower than a 4. So let's wrap this up with secondary. So we talked about the pass coverage. I have a feeling I know we're both going to go with this one. Let's talk secondary. From a depth standpoint, talent standpoint, playing at a championship level, you can, if you want to kind of break it down quickly between second safety and corner, you can. But just overall, what's your take on the secondary?
Look, overall, it's a 5. This is a championship level group. Period. End of discussion. They were a championship level group last year, and they upgraded at safety. And I don't care who's starting at that safety position, whether it's Rod Hurd, whether it's a Don Schuler. I don't really care. That's still an upgrade to me. And so if they were championship level last year, they're going to be championship level this year because they upgraded the one position, that was suspect, I guess, that you would want to say. But I love Cam Hart. There's no doubt about it, but you're replacing Cam Hart with Christian Gray most likely. And that's that's Rob and Peter pay Paul. Like it's the same situation. They're just different players. I'm gonna miss Cam Hart, but I'm gonna really enjoy watching Christian Gray do his thing too. And then you
they're
add
different.
Mickey into the group. Yeah, they're completely different players.
Cam
No
was an
doubt about it.
off-ball,
Yes.
drive downhill, blow it up guy. Christian is and that's similar to what Jaden is, although Jaden's a smaller package. Jaden and Cam play the game somewhat similarly. Cam's longer and faster. Christian Gray plays the game more like Benjamin Morrison.
That's 100%.
Yeah.
I mean, they look like they're long lost brothers. So yeah, it's a 5 for me. It's not even close. I was gonna go like maybe a high 4 for safety, but corners were a 5 together. They're all a 5. So I like it.
I would say safety. I don't believe as a unit is a 5 for me as a unit.
Right.
You have but you have a 5 at safety.
Right.
And I do think the safety position is going to be better than it was last year. Right. Like that. I with between Rod Hurd and Adon Schuler and Luke Talich and even Kennedy Urlacher and Bronte Johnson. Kennedy was a guy from sources that I heard from that like they are really impressed with what he did. Luke Talich coming back from injury. Adon Schuler had a very good spring. Rod Hurd to me you're going to be better at safety than the safety opposite Xavier Watts. You're going to be better than you were last year, in my opinion. And cornerback, as I said, they're not going to miss a beat. And then of course at nickel, that's the only question I have is the depth at nickel. Clarence Lewis is gone. Micah Bell is gone. Right. But the way that Notre Dame plays their defense, they can just play more rover. They can just play more base with Jalen Sneed and Jaden Osbury.
Jaden Osbury's kind of doing the combo deal there. So
Yep. So I'm going 5, comfortably 5.
Yeah.
You've got 2 All-Americans in your secondary. You'd have to be pretty bad at those other positions to not be there, and that's just not the case for Notre Dame. They're very, very, very good there. Right. Very, very good. So I feel good. So we went 4 D-line, 4 and 3 at linebacker, both 5 in the secondary.
Yep.
And then offense, we were both 4 at quarterback, both 5 at running back, 3 and 4 at receiver, me 3, you 4, and then me 3 at tight end, you 4. I sound like a me 3. And then
3, you 4.
I was 4, you were 3 on the O-line. So I had the lower group on 2. You had the lower group on another. We were the same at quarterback and running back, correct? Same at D-line, same secondary. You were lower than I was at linebacker. So that worked out pretty well.
Yeah, we got one more group to do, though. We'll just do special teams.
Go ahead.
Kicking game as a whole. So kicker, punter, long snapper, those are the 3 specialist groups.
Yeah.
For me, look, I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on this. It's a 3 for me. And here's the reasons why. Look, long snapper will be fine. Long snapper is always fine. They don't know who the starter is yet, but it doesn't matter. I don't really care. They're going to get that figured out. Kicker, I like the South Carolina kid, Mitch Jeter. He's
90% kicker.
He was fantastic in games. He was fantastic in games last year. Struggled a little bit in the in the spring, but like I don't care. I know what he can do. He'll be fine. The new punter from Australia, right? He never played an American football game. Like I can't. People are all excited about Thor and all this other nonsense. Okay, that's great.
Do you know that he can catch a snap?
Right.
I don't know. You know what I mean? Like I have no clue.
I don't know anything about this kid. And so he's 6'5", 225. I know he can probably play D end, but I don't know if he can punt. So
I played with a guy in high school or college whose name was Thor, and he wasn't a very good football player. I played with another kid whose nickname was Thor, and he was a good football player.
Right.
So I had a tight end at Salisbury whose name was Thor, but I played with the kid in another place whose name was Thor. I coached a kid whose nickname was Thor, and he was a terrible football player. So, it's great. He's got a cool nickname. Doesn't mean he can play football.
Exactly.
And we're not saying he can't. We're generally saying we have no clue.
None.
No clue.
None.
Never seen a kid punt before in a football game. Ever.
Correct. So there's just too much unknown there for me to go any higher than a 4 for the whole group. Mitch Jeter, I'm a 4. This other kid, I don't know. So we'll have to wait and see. So I'm a 3.
Special teams to me is 2 things. Well, 3 things really. It's your snapper, holder, kicker, punter. It's your return unit, and it's your coverage units.
Good call.
The coverage units for Notre Dame for me are a low 4.
Okay.
The return game for me for Notre Dame is a 4 borderline 5. I mean, Jaden Harrison was an All-American last year, and he does not have the best average on the team last year because Jadarian Price was better. They have 3 kick return. They had their current roster has 3 kick returns for touchdowns last year. Jadarian had 1 and Jaden Harrison had 2. I don't care who the punt returner is, whether it's Jeremiah Love, Jaden Greathouse. I mean, there's some options back there.
Oh, for sure.
Their return game is going to be pretty good. I think their coverage units are solid. So those are 4s for me. I'm a 2 with the snapper, holder, punter, kicker situation because I do care more about who the snapper is going to be, and I don't know who it's going to be. You think it's going to be worked out, but we don't know that for sure. We don't know that for sure. I just need to see it because I couldn't even tell you today who the snapper is going to be.
Right
at this
100%.
Point in time. That's a concern for me. When it was Michael Vincent's turn, like you kind of knew, but this time you don't necessarily know. And as you said, we know nothing about the punter. So Mitch Jeter, I'm with you, completely comfortable about. So overall special teams, I'm at a 3, just because the uncertainty and the snapper and the punting situation is pretty important.
Yeah.
But once we get eyes on the kid, I have a feeling we're going to be comfortable with it and end up being a 4.
They're not flying to Australia.
Like today, June 13th, it's a major question mark. And it would be a pure homer take and a trust the coaches take to say anything otherwise.
Right.
Your point's valid. Guys, they're not going to go get this kid on a whim.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like they've put research into this, but that doesn't mean we need to say, all right, they're going to be good. I don't know. I need to see it with my own eyes. We need to actually see them perform before we go.
Correct.
There. I think once we do, because of that, I think we'll be fine.
I think I agree.
Our value, when I say we, I mean us will be fine in our ability to see it and feel comfortable with it. Not we as in like we're Notre Dame, we'll be fine. I just mean like Vince and I will be fine with, upping the grade once we actually see it.
Right.
But without seeing it. So I go 3 overall. I'm comfortably 4 in the coverage and return operation. And the coverage operation has to get better. I just think knowing who's going to be in it now, I just am a lot more comfortable in it now than I was. They weren't great last year. They're probably a 3 last year. I think where we're at now, it's 4 with all the guys coming back. And then the other one is just a bit of a concern. So I'm 3 on special.
I think that's fair.
And I also think too, going into the second year of Marty Biaggi matters as well.
Sure,
because now they have 2 years of him. I mean, look, experience in a place is fine. That's I mean is important, I should say. And now he's in year 2, so now the players know him better, as opposed to what Brian Mason was doing. They now have a better sense of who he is.
Sure,
and that helps as well. So
yep,
that's why I'm at a 3, but I have a feeling after a couple weeks of fall camp, we're going to be like, yeah, they're going to be okay there.
Yeah. There's just for me, and I'm not going to beat this dead horse, but for like as a punter, there's more than just kicking it as far as you can. You know what I mean? There's nuance to being a punter, right?
Well,
there's coffin kicks, there's the height, there's there's just a million different. It's not just
Bryce McPherson
every time.
Was actually a top 25 punter, actually a top 20 punter last year in yards per kick, if he had enough to be eligible. But Notre Dame was like outside the top 50 in net punt return average, because a lot of times he would kick it where it wasn't supposed to go. You could see them running left and he kicks it down the middle or to the right, or he'd kick it out, 60-yard punt. Well, it went out of the end zone. It was a net 40 because you couldn't pin it in the 20. So he had a strong leg, but he would often outkick the coverage. We saw that again in the long return against USC. He didn't kick the ball where it's supposed to go, and you make a mistake to Zechariah Branch, and he's going to burn you for it. And that's exactly what happened.
Outkicking the coverage is great when you're getting married. It's not great when you're punting the ball. Okay,
well, we both know that.
Yeah, that's all I'm saying.
Yeah.
So
we both have experience with that.
Absolutely. So I'm just saying, I'm excited to see what this kid can do. I'm sure he's great, but we need to see it, and I'm excited to see it.
Yep. Well, Vince, before we go, we do have a few super chats. So I wanted to 4 super chats. I wanted to get those. Obviously, Garen Knutson had the big one at the beginning. Garen, thank you so much for that one. Appreciate you. I had a super chat from Alan Watson. It says, hey, Coach, if you have access to a sauna, it will help with the defense. Really helped with my nicotine addiction. Alan, if you could maybe shoot me a DM, I would like to know. I mean, I actually do have access to it, Vince. We're members of that the club.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Knollwood. So I believe they have a sauna. I just I've never actually spent time in a sauna, so I don't know how it works and what I should do. So Alan, if you could email me at brian@irishbreakdown.com or shoot me a DM on Twitter or send me a private message on the boards. I would love to reach out to you about that. And I do appreciate that because this is kicking my butt. It's absolutely like we went out to dinner last night and Angela's like, you're not going to get pop, right? I was like, you're so funny. Like, yeah, of course not. But like, I don't want to be doing that because I am trying to cut that. I'm trying to cut as much processed sugar out of my body as I can. Iden Benami with a super chat. He says, thank you, Iden. Do we have other players on the board right now if our top receivers, LBs, DBs commit elsewhere? Vince, what is the most important to you and Dylan when looking to school? So we'll answer the first part first, Vince, and then you can answer the second part.
Sure.
Do you have other players on the board? There are other players on the board that they would turn to if the need arose. But linebacker, the need won't arise. I'm quite confident in that. Receiver, maybe. DB, I'm very comfortable with where things stand right now. So, but yes, Notre Dame does have, I know for a fact there's a safety that they're looking at that if they miss on Blair and or Jameer Joseph, that there's a kid they're looking at that I grade higher than Tabron Benny Powell on the board that they're going to turn to. So this staff in those positions has backup plans if need be, but they're not going to be needed at linebacker. I don't believe they're going to be needed at wide receiver, but we shall see. So the second part, Vince, is he says, what is the most important to you and Dylan when looking at schools?
Well, the vastly most important thing is education. And he knows that playing football is a vehicle to getting his education, which is super important. He's over a 4.0 student. He's a good student. He wants to get his education. So that's by far the number one. And then as he told me yesterday, the most important thing is getting an offer. And so you can't pick a school if they don't offer you. And so he just wants to get some offers and have some options and things like that. And then we can kind of drill down and see what's most important, whether it's, distance away, whether it's facilities, whether it's the coaching staff, all of those different things, lots of different boxes to check. But it's such an awesome experience just going through it, man. I'm just enjoying these road trips with my kiddo, and my father-in-law has been going with us, and just the three of us in the car, just chatting it up, talking about life, and watching the Hitler documentary on Netflix. A lot of good stuff. It's just, this is a time in my life that I'm really trying to savor and not forget, because this is the one and only time it's going to happen. So that's the most important thing, to be honest with you, is the time that I'm spending with the kid. I'm sure he doesn't necessarily think that because he's 17 and knows everything, but at 43, it's super important to me, and that's what's the best part.
All right, we have a couple super chats from Bill Shepard. Bill, thank you so much. Bill is also a new member of the message board. All of you, so who need to get up and get on the board, you're missing out. Bill is a new member. We appreciate you, Bill. Bill also left us a pair of super chats, which we greatly appreciate. He says, first one is, our placement of big games in the schedule and bye week sets Notre Dame up to be prepared and focused. I'll just say this, Vince. I talked about it briefly, and you and I next week are going to, one of the shows is going to be our schedule overview show. We'll do like the 4 quarters, how we do it, break down the 4 quarters and all that. We will do that next week. We'll probably do like trap game stuff and all that type of thing, but we'll evaluate the schedule next week. And this is going to be one of the things that I'll talk about, is this year's schedule, I think, is comparable to last year's in toughness. I think it's stronger than a lot of fans are. The problem that hurts Notre Dame is that some of the top teams on the schedule are not the perceived big boys. And so people just kind of stargaze sort of thing for schools. And, well, it's Louisville, so it can't be. It's not like they're playing, I'm trying to think of a team, that people it's not this team that's ranked a lot of times. Well, okay, but Louisville's better than that team right now. Texas A&M is probably going to be better than that team right now. And USC, I think, is going to be better than people think. I think a lot of people don't think USC is going to be any good. A lot of people don't think Florida State's going to be any good. And I think they're missing the boat on those. But I think it's a challenging schedule. But it's slated much better than the one from last year. Way better. And the fact that you don't have 4 straight night games in the middle of the schedule against a tough team. Because last year, it wasn't just the night games. It was the night games was against Ohio State, Duke, Louisville, and USC, probably like the 4 of the 5 best teams you're going to play all year. This year, you have 3 night games in 4 weeks, and one of them's against Florida State. The other ones are against Army and then USC. Well, 2 of those are going to be tough, but the Army, let's be honest, the Army game's not going to be a tough game. It shouldn't be any good. So that's a little different than playing Louisville as part of that the third team in that stretch, and then you've got Virginia in between, also in between USC and Florida State. So I agree. I think the placement of the big games and the way that the night games and stuff are scheduled, all of that to me is favorable to Notre Dame. Very favorable to Notre Dame.
Love it.
And then the last one, Bill says, greatly appreciate all the hard work that goes into this show and the boards. If you're not on the boards, you're missing out on great behind-the-scenes info. And Bill hasn't even gotten to experience the film breakdowns yet.
Oh, that's right.
So wait till those start coming. And I got a couple that I'm going to be working on here over the next couple weeks. So, yeah, very, very exciting stuff. So, Bill, I appreciate that. And, Vince, I think that is a great segue into the close.
All right.
Because people absolutely – need to be signing up at boards.irishbreakdown.com like my guy Bill has done. Appreciate you very much, buddy.
Right at the bottom, boards.irishbreakdown.com. Get on there. Make sure you like the video that we just did. I mean, we've got 300 people in here having a good time. The chat has been awesome. So make sure you hit that like button on your way out. We really appreciate it. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. Hit that notification bell so you know when we're going to be on. Brian and I are going to be doing, starting next week, 1 o'clock shows. So it doesn't run as into the evening.
Good reminder.
Show.
I forgot to do that because obviously the mailbag tomorrow is going to be 1. But we're gonna move to 1 o'clock. So all of our shows the rest of the summer are going to be 1 o'clock starts.
Right. And so come join us 1 hour earlier. Get your lunch in, have a seat, and then just join us next week. We're gonna have some fun next week. I'm really looking forward to it. So 1 o'clock show starting next week. So make sure you hit that notification bell though, because if you forget, it can notify you that we're about ready to rock and roll. And so share with your family and friends as well. Football season is upon us. You can just smell it in the air. I'm super excited about it. Cannot wait. My kid's going to football practice. Like this is like, oh, let's go. It's football season, baby. So stick with us. We got a lot of good stuff in the hopper for you guys moving forward for this summer. So can't wait to have you guys along for the ride. So for Brian, I'm Vince, and we will talk to you next time on the Irish Breakdown Podcast.